Chapter 2442. One day later, above the blue ocean, a figure flashed in the void and moved at an incredible speed, just like a flash of flowing light. He was dressed in a moon-white robe, with black hair and black eyes. His figure was as tall as a pine tree, his skin as crystal white as jade, and his handsome face was angular, as if it was carved by a knife and an axe. From his appearance alone, he looked like a young man. His aura was ordinary, but if there was a martial emperor here, they would feel an oppressive force pressing down on them. It was as if he was facing a ruler that controlled the universe and held the sun and moon in his mouth. This man was Lin's son. "I'm almost there." Looking into the distance, he sighed with emotion. After careful calculation, it had been nearly 100 years since he left the mortal world for the first time. During this period, he returned to the mortal world in a hurry when the domain of despair came to an end. 100 years was like a snap of the fingers. But in the lower realms, the world had probably changed, and the seas had turned into mulberry fields. Lin Zhong, Mr. Vulture, Young Ku, Zhu Lao San, Ning Meng Shiryu. How are they? Memories of the past came to Lin Sun's mind bit by bit, making him a little emotional. He was more timid when he was closer to home. At this moment, he also had an indescribable feeling. 100 years had passed. Were those people still there? His spiritual awareness spread out as if it could see the mystery of the world. But soon, Lin Sun frowned. The faraway sea area bordered the East Sea of Xiao Empire, but now there was an orderly natural moat. Countless violent and gorgeous world orders poured down from the sky like a waterfall. The power of order was surging like tides and even turned into dancing dragons. Looking from a distance, it was like a barrier connecting the sky and the earth, completely separating the Soul Oblivion Sea from the East Sea of Xiao Empire. Lin Sun's spiritual awareness had detected such an abnormal scene before. The world order turned into a barrier and cut off the Soul Oblivion Sea, which didn't exist in the past at all. Lin Sun slowed down and approached. With his divine awareness, he found that the chasm-like power of order was like layers upon layers of restriction shackles, shrouding the Xiao Empire on the opposite side and isolating all the rules, spiritual energy, and power of the Great Way. Xiao Empire was a world. Then, the order barriers were layers of light shields that enveloped the Xiao Empire and formed a natural defense force of order. Even an ancestral emperor would tremble in fear when facing such a barrier. Not to mention breaking through it. Even lightly touching it would probably cause one to suffer a heavy blow. He is indeed changed. Lin Sun's black eyes flickered. He raised his eyes to look at the sky, but he couldn't see any aura of the taboo order energy. Obviously, the energy controlled by Heavenly Emperor Shur could no longer descend upon the mortal world. All of this was most likely related to the recovery of the core power of the Myriad Tao origins. Lin Sun looked carefully. If he wanted to return to Xiao Empire, he had to pass through such an orderly natural mode and find a way to cross it. Soon, Lin Sun noticed that thousands of meters away, in the area covered by the torrent of order, a vortex portal emerged. It was hard to notice if one didn't look carefully. Lin Sun directly teleported over and sensed for a while. He couldn't help but hesitate. This vortex portal was indeed a tunnel that could traverse the Zhou Void. It was transformed by the power of order, but Lin Sun didn't know. Or would they be teleported if they entered it? At this moment, suddenly, there was a sound of breaking through the air in the distance. Lin Sun turned his head and saw a group of practitioners flying towards him. There were 3 men and 2 women. Obviously, they were the creatures living in the Soul Oblivion Sea. Although they were in human form, they retained the unique characteristics of the tribe. Among these 5 people, the weakest one was in the Great Sage realm. The handsome green-haired man was in the first level of the Quasi-Emperor realm. Moreover, they were all very young and full of vitality. Obviously, they were not seniors. Someone actually arrived first. Is this fellow Taoist also planning to head to the Myriad Tao world? When the 5 people saw Lin Sun, they were also very surprised. One of them, a thin man with golden luster all over his body, asked. Myriad Dao Realm? Lin Sun was stunned and asked, "Where is that?" The five people all showed a suspicious look. A beautiful woman with a cold and arrogant look said coldly, "Friend, over the past decades, have you never cared about the affairs of the world? You don't even know about the Myriad Dao Realm. It's really ridiculous." Her words were harsh. Seeing Lin Sun frown, a person next to her quickly said, "The Myriad Dao Realm is where the Xiao Empire used to be. With the recovery of spiritual qi, the territory of the Xiao Empire continued to expand, and many unknown folded spaces and secret realms appeared. Today, the territory of the Xiao Empire is at least 100 times larger than before. Because of the changes caused by the recovery of spiritual qi, the world calls it the Myriad Dao Realm." Lin Sun finally understood and said, "Thank you very much. I've been in closed-door training these years. I didn't expect that the world has become completely different." The five people showed a look of understanding. This was normal. Lin Sun's aura was so ordinary that they didn't feel any threat, which also made them relax. "Friend, the Myriad Dao Realm is regarded as the world's Taoist fate outbreak. With the recovery of spiritual qi, many rare opportunities will emerge every once in a while. If you're interested, you can go there." The handsome green-haired man said with a reserved look and gave Lin Sun some advice. "Of course, you should be careful when you enter the Myriad Dao Realm at this time. In these years, there have been many extremely powerful and ruthless people in that place." The arrogant woman next to him became impatient and urged, "Senior Brother Wei, he is just a stranger we met by chance. There's no need to talk to him. Let's hurry up." The green-haired man smiled and nodded. He immediately led the others into the vortex portal and disappeared. Watching them leave, Lin Sun couldn't help sighing with emotion. The Myriad Dao Realm, the place where the Taoist fate outbreak. Its territory expanded 100 times, and many folded spaces and secret realms emerged. Everything in the Xiao Empire had indeed become completely different from before. At least, if one wanted to enter from the Soul Oblivion Sea, he had to pass through an order barrier. Shaking his head, Lin Sun stepped into the vortex portal. Boom! The dazzling divine light burst out, and the next moment, Lin Sun's figure disappeared. He had long been accustomed to the space shift, so he waited quietly. But suddenly, an extremely terrifying force of world order emerged and blotted out the heavens and the earth as it pressed down on Lin Sun. The force was extremely violent and could easily tear apart any cultivator, and even an Emperor Realm expert might not be able to withstand it. Rise! Lin Sun's expression did not change. He directly took out the Abyssal Sword Cauldron, and Purple Order Phoenix Flame emerged from the furnace. Lin Sun's expression changed. The power of Order Phoenix Flame was constantly being oppressed, and there was a sign that it could not hold on any longer. Boom! In a flash, the Abyssal Sword Cauldron was directly suppressed. The terrifying force of order pressed down, causing Lin Sun's aura to sink, but he was not hurt. I see. The force of order in this world prevents all forces that go against the natural order from entering. Lin Sun immediately understood and restrained his aura without hesitation. As expected, the oppressive force of order weakened until Lin Sun suppressed his cultivation to the first level of Emperor Realm, and the oppressive force of order finally disappeared. It seems that the current Xiao Empire can only allow cultivators at the first level of Emperor Realm. Otherwise, they will be greatly suppressed and unable to move an inch. While Lin Sun was thinking, his eyes flashed, and he appeared on a void of blue sea. In an instant, he felt that this world was different. The surging pure spiritual energy was like a whistling sea breeze as it swept through the surroundings and spread out in all directions, causing this world to be filled with incomparably surging and dense vitality. At the same time, Lin Sun felt that the great way of heaven and earth was extremely solid. In the past, the power released in a breath could make the world tremble. But now, it could only cause circles of ripples to appear in the nearby space. Lin Sun was not surprised. These years, he had traveled the ancient path of the starry sky, crossed the void, and traveled to countless worlds. Some worlds were as fragile as glass, and a punch from a saint could shake the world, burn mountains, and boil the sea. Some worlds were as solid as divine gold. Even an Emperor Realm expert's all-out attack would only be able to split the mountains and split the seas and trample through the mountains and rivers. Generally speaking, the more solid the order of a world was, the higher the quality of spiritual chi it could contain, the stronger the great way of heaven, and the higher one's cultivation was, the more benefits one could get from cultivating in it. For example, the Central Earth Tao estate in the Hongmeng world, the order of the world was huge and solid, covered with the incomparable power of the great way of heaven. Obviously, with the changes of the recovery of spiritual chi in Xiao Empire, the power of order of the whole world was constantly growing stronger. Screech! Suddenly, a ferocious bird with silver wings and dazzling light swooped down from the sky. It crossed the void and tried to catch Lin Sun. Lin Sun stretched out his hand and grasped the ferocious bird in his palm. The bird trembled with fear, realizing that it had made a mistake and met a fierce opponent. It's just a silver-scaled falcon, but its cultivation is comparable to that of a life-passing tribulation king. It's getting more and more interesting. Lin Sun was deep in thought. He waved his sleeve and let the silver-scaled falcon go. The latter escaped in a panic and didn't dare to stay any longer. It didn't know that Lin Sun was not merciful, but simply didn't want to deal with such a small fry. It's been 100 years, and now the spiritual chi in the lower world is recovering. I wonder what Xiao Empire has become. Lin Sun looked into the distance and could still vaguely recognize that this sea area originally belonged to the East Sea of the Empire. But compared with the past, it had undergone earth-shaking changes. Let's go back first. Although the world had changed so much that even a silver-scaled falcon could become a life-passing tribulation king, Lin Sun didn't care about it all. What he cared about most was his old friends and relatives. He didn't waste any time and directly flashed over. For the sake of avoiding causing any disturbances, he restrained his aura and flew silently. Please remember the original domain name of this book. Literature Library Mobile Version Website. Chapter 2443. The sea breeze was whistling, carrying the surging flow of spiritual energy. Compared with Lin Sun's previous life in the lower world, the spiritual chi in the world was hundreds or even thousands of times richer. It was comparable to the macro world on the starry sky ancient path. A thought came to Lin Sun's mind as he walked. The revival of spiritual energy was still going on. Maybe he could make a breakthrough in the lower world. Lin Sun shook his head. Now that he had entered the Myriad Dao realm, which was supposed to be the territory of the Xiao Empire, he had to suppress his cultivation and maintain it at the first level of the Emperor realm. He didn't know how long it would take for him to break through to the 5th level of the Emperor realm. Suddenly, there was a battle in the distance. Lin Sun subconsciously glanced over and saw a beautiful girl in a fiery red dress, with snow-white skin, being besieged. She was in a precarious situation. She was at the 7th level of the longevity tribulation, while her opponents were at the 9th level of the longevity tribulation. No matter which one of them was stronger than her. Lin Sun noticed that the reason why the girl in red could hold on until now was that she had a very powerful ancient saint treasure. It was a flaming red whip, covered with the mysterious power of the divine Tao. Every lash of the whip was like a dancing fire dragon, wantonly and violent. There were many cultivators watching the battle in the nearby sea, but none of them intervened. They looked at the 3 people besieging the girl in red with deep fear. Obviously, the 3 people were not simple. Lin Sun noticed that the 3 men and 2 women he met in the Soul Oblivion Sea were also watching the battle. Then Lin Sun planned to withdraw his consciousness and continue on his way. He was not interested in a battle of this level, so he didn't want to get involved. Although the girl in red was in a precarious situation, she wouldn't be defeated in a short time. However, when he was about to withdraw his consciousness, the girl in red suddenly scolded in a clear voice, "If you want to deal with the Yi family in the East Sea, do it openly. Don't you feel ashamed to use such a dirty trick to force my grandpa to bow his head?" Her pretty face was as cold as frost, and her beautiful eyes were about to spit fire. The Yi family in the East Sea. Lin Sun was stunned. Wasn't that Yi Qi's family? The Heavens Pivot Holy Land is a famous sect in the ancient Desolation realm. How could you bully a junior like me? Shameless. Just you wait. Even if I, Yi Ling Shuang, die today, I won't let you have your way. That red-robed young lady who called herself Yi Ling Shuang was clearly flustered and exasperated. Or to put it more accurately, she had already sensed that the situation she was in was extremely bad. Heaven's Pivot's sacred ground. A cold light flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes when he heard this word. When he entered the ancient Desolation realm for the first time, he became enemies with the successor of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land. In those years, in order to kill him, this great force in the ancient Desolation realm had attacked him many times. Interesting. The members of the Heaven's Pivot Divine Grounds have actually descended to the mortal dimension as well. In this way, it would seem that the changes in the mortal dimension have aroused the greed of those sects in the ancient Desolation region. While Lin was thinking, he had already walked over. It's that guy. At the same time, the 3 men and 2 women who had met Lin Sun before all noticed Lin Sun and couldn't help being stunned. Especially when she saw Lin Sun walking straight to the battlefield. The cold and aloof woman couldn't help but sneer. He doesn't even know the name of the myriad Dao realm, and he still plans to play the hero to save the beauty. This kid is really ignorant. Fearless. The handsome green-haired man who was the leader raised his eyebrows and said, "Anyway, we've met by chance. It's better to remind him." As he spoke, he said to Lin Sun, "My friend, this is between the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land and the Yi family of the East Sea. You can't get involved." Lin Sun waved his hand and said, "Thank you for reminding me." But he still continued walking. Seeing this, the aloof woman sneered and said, "Brother Wei, did you see that? He doesn't appreciate your kindness at all." The eyes of the handsome green-haired man also flashed with annoyance, and then he sighed and said, "Anyway, we've already reminded him. Since he insists on getting involved, he should bear the responsibility of his own life and death." He and his companions all carried a kind of indistinct arrogance. After all, the weakest among them had the cultivation of the saint realm. For example, the handsome green-haired man had the cultivation of the quasi-emperor realm. Almost everyone present was nothing in their eyes. At the same time, the cultivators who were watching the battle in the vicinity saw Lin Sun walking towards the battlefield. They couldn't help but be stunned. Who is this guy? Is he going to get involved in the matter of the Heavens Pivot Holy Land? He looks unfamiliar. I've never seen him before. He shouldn't be someone powerful. He's simply courting death. Who doesn't know that since the arrival of the experts of the Heavens Pivot Holy Land 10 years ago, they've been coveting the territory of the East Sea. In these 10 years, all the forces, big and small, have already chosen to submit. Only the Yi family of the East Sea is still holding on. Holding on? I think it won't be long before they're destroyed. There was a lot of discussion in the field. The red-robed girl Yi Ling Shuang and the 3 experts of the Heavens Pivot Holy Land also noticed Lin Sun's appearance. Yi Ling Shuang was happy at first, but when she saw that Lin Sun was an unfamiliar young man, and he was alone, she couldn't help but show a trace of disappointment. As for the 3 experts of the Heavens Pivot Holy Land, they all frowned, and a cold expression appeared on their faces. "Friend, I advise you to leave now. Don't interfere in this matter, or you'll definitely be met with a calamity." A man with hair like a halberd and a cold gaze like lightning bellowed, not bothering to conceal his threat. He released his aura, causing many in the surroundings to exclaim in shock. The green-haired handsome man and the others laughed and shook their heads. This little bit of power was only enough to bully those ordinary characters. However, Lin Sun seemed to be completely unaware of it. His gaze was fixed on Yi Ling Shuang as he asked, "Who is Yi Shao Qi to you?" Surprise flashed in Yi Ling Shuang's eyes, and she subconsciously replied, "That's my grandfather's name." Grandfather? Lin Sun was stunned. It was like a storm was raging in his heart. How many years had it been? That little fatty Yi Shao Qi already had a granddaughter? He was completely caught off guard. "You're courting death. Seeing that he was ignored by Lin Sun, the eyes of the man with hair, like a halberd, flashed with rage. He waved the battle spear in his hand and charged towards Lin Sun. Boom! Violent ripples appeared in the void. The battle spear set off a dazzling shadow, piercing through the air with tyrannical power. This attack caused Yi Lingshuang's expression to change, and she subconsciously said, "Young master, dodge. This kid is finished," the cold and arrogant woman said with pity. The green-haired handsome man let out a long sigh. He had already warned Lin Sun, but this guy still wanted to die. Who could he blame? At this moment, the corners of Lin Sun's mouth slightly curled up. How many years had it been? A small character in the longevity tribulation realm actually dared to attack him. If this news spread to all the heavens in the starry sky, no one would believe it. Lin Sun's figure did not move. The battle spear stopped 3 feet in front of him, unable to move any further. The pupils of the man with hair, like a halberd, contracted. But no matter how he struggled, the battle spear in his hand was frozen there, not moving an inch. He was shocked and secretly cursed in his heart. At this moment, Lin Sun looked at him and said with an indifferent expression, "The successor of the heavens' pivot holy land still has such a bad memory." Bang! The battle spear exploded, turning into a rain of light that filled the sky. As for the man with hair like a halberd, he silently turned into ashes that drifted into the air as if he had been incinerated. The entire audience was silent, dumbfounded. Some people even rubbed their eyes, as if they didn't dare to believe this was real. Huh? The pupils of the green-haired handsome man and the others all shrank, their hearts pounding. They were also shocked by this strange scene of death. Even with their cultivation, they actually didn't know how Lin Sun had attacked. The other 2 experts from the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land who were originally attacking Yi Lingshuang trembled at this moment, their expressions changing drastically. Yi Lingshuang was also startled, her beautiful eyes widened. That ordinary-looking fellow, could it be that he was an extremely powerful expert who had concealed his strength? Lass, it's a big taboo to be distracted during a battle. Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh. Who are you? How dare you kill someone from the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land? At the same time, the 2 experts from the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land withdrew their attacks, their expressions ashen as they looked at Lin Sun, revealing a sense of fear in their hearts. That's right, who was this young man? Countless people present also looked at Lin Sun with surprise and doubt. You don't even remember me? Lin Sun's eyes flickered. In the past, when he was in the ancient desolation realm, he slaughtered the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land, Lingbao Holy Land, Heavenly Sword Sect, Xuandu Taoism Sect, and other orthodoxies, causing them to suffer heavy losses. All of them hated Lin Sun to the bone. But now, these 2 descendants of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land actually didn't recognize him. This enemy, obviously, with the passage of time, the affairs of the world had changed. Perhaps only those old people from the past remembered the grudges and blood feud of the past. Go! At this moment, the 2 people from the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land looked at each other, turned around, and fled without any hesitation. Obviously, they had sensed how terrifying Lin Sun was and didn't dare to stay. Can you still run? Lin Sun snapped out of his trance and flicked his finger. Bang! Bang! Far away on the sea, the 2 experts from the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land died suddenly, their bodies turning into ashes in an instant. Not to mention blood. Not even a piece of bone was left. Completely annihilated. Hiss, a series of gasps sounded in the field, and everyone was shocked. 3 existences at the 9th level of the longevity calamity might not be enough to dominate the world today, but they were still like pillars of strength. Especially, the 3 of them were descendants of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land. But in the blink of an eye, they were annihilated. Who was that strange young man? How dared he not put the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land in his eyes? Yi Lingshuang was also in a trance at this moment, and her eyes stared blankly. It was like a dream. The 3 enemies who put her in a dead end were annihilated just like that. It was even easier than killing ants. Girl, take me to see your grandfather. Lin Sun's voice rang out, waking Yi Lingshuang up. She nodded subconsciously and then realized that something was wrong. She took a deep breath and summoned up her courage. Senior, can I know your name? Also, why are you looking for my grandfather? Lin Sun smiled. He could tell that this was a vigilant and quick-witted girl. Chapter 2444. Your grandpa and I are good friends. When Lin Sun thought of Yi Chi, he couldn't help but recall the days when he was young in the bloodthirsty camp. It was also at that time that he became close friends with Ning Ming, Shi Yu, Bai Ling Shi, Yi Chi, Gong Ming, Li Duxing, and others. Now that he had been away for nearly 100 years, he didn't know where these friends were now. Let's go. As Lin Sun was thinking, he left with Yi Lingshuang. His figure flickered and disappeared in a few blinks of an eye. It was too late for Yi Lingshuang to refuse. As they watched him leave, there was a lot of discussion. They were all speculating about Lin Sun's identity and what impact his appearance would have on the hostility between the Yi family of the East Sea and the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land. Interesting, we were all wrong before. The green-haired handsome man revealed a playful smile. His aura is so restrained that no one can detect it. I'm afraid this person's cultivation is not lower than mine. His companions around him were all surprised. The green-haired handsome man was called Wei Yunzhong, the holy son of the Green Shark clan of the Soul Oblivion Sea. He was extremely talented. In the decades after the spiritual qi recovery, his cultivation had been soaring. Now, he had the cultivation of the quasi-emperor realm, which overshadowed some of the elders in his clan. Wei Yunzhong's prestige also quickly spread in the Soul Oblivion Sea. No one had expected that a person like Wei Yunzhong would think so highly of the young man. For a moment, their hearts were in turmoil. Only the cold and arrogant woman had a complicated look in her eyes. That guy is too insidious. He obviously has the cultivation of the quasi-emperor realm, but he said he didn't know the myriad Dao realm. Previously, she had thought that Lin Sun would die. Who would have thought that such a change would happen? In fact, she was quite embarrassed. When she said this, she also had a strong prejudice. Wei Yunzhong smiled and said, "It's just a character we met by chance. Don't be angry about it. Let's go." It is said that there will be a shocking Taoist opportunity in the forbidden city of the Xiao Empire. It even alarmed many ancient orthodoxies in the ancient desolation realm to intervene. If we want to share, we can't delay any longer. As he spoke, he took the lead and flew away. The others hurriedly followed. On the blue sea, seagulls were flying. Lin Sun brought Yi Lingshuang along as they soared through the air, exuding a leisurely air. He didn't fly at full speed. He was more like a tourist, enjoying the wonders of heaven and earth. The revival of spirit qi had changed the structure of the entire Xiao Empire and made the whole world look completely different from before. In the past, the king's domain could be called an overlord, but now it was a common sight. For example, Yi Lingshuang was only 17 or 18 years old at most, but she already had a cultivation base at the 7th level of the longevity tribulation. Even Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. Lin Sun calmed his mind and felt the changes in Zhou Su, deducing them. He couldn't help but wonder what would have happened to his cultivation if he had stayed in the mortal world instead of going to the ancient desolation realm. After a while, Lin Sun got an answer. If he had stayed back then, it would have been impossible for him to achieve the great Tao he had today. After all, the revival of spirit qi had only begun in the last few decades. The myriad Dao realm could only accommodate people of the first-level Emperor realm at most. This also meant that even if the world changed drastically, it was impossible for the current myriad Dao world to give birth to someone with a cultivation base higher than the first level of the martial Emperor realm. And he, Lin Sun, was now in the 4th level of the martial Emperor realm. And he was the first peak-level emperor in 100,000 years. More importantly, the speed of cultivation didn't represent one's achievements on the Great Tao. Fourth senior brother Ling Xuanzi could be said to be the best in the history. He became a sage at 9 and a peak-level emperor at 19, but he was still slightly inferior to Lin Sun in the same realm. Lin Sun had paid attention to Yi Lingshuang's battle before. The power of the 7th level of the longevity tribulation realm was far from being comparable to him when they were at the same level. This was because the speed of cultivation was too fast, but the tempering of each level was lacking. Senior, do you really know my grandpa? On the way, Lin Sun's demeanor was calm, allowing Yi Ling Shuang to relax. She couldn't help but ask curiously. Even the way she addressed him changed. Yes, he was a little fatty back then. He looked naive, but in fact, he was full of evil tricks. Lin Sun smiled. Yi Ling Shuang didn't know what was in her mind, but she laughed out loud. The girl was pretty and lively, and her laughter was as clear as spring water, radiating charm. The girl giggled. No wonder, although Grandpa is always smiling, my father and the others don't dare to disobey him. Lin Sun casually asked, "What happened to your Yi clan recently? Why is the Heaven's Pivot sacred ground targeting you?" Yi Ling Shuang's smile disappeared, and a hint of anger appeared on her face. She revealed the grudge between the Yi clan and the Heaven's Pivot sacred ground. The reason was very simple. Since the recovery of spiritual qi in the lower realm, 9 spiritual springs appeared in the territory controlled by the Yi clan. These 9 spiritual springs all had their own wonders. Some spewed out gung metal qi, some contained Ewood essence, and some released Xuani fire. Not only could it be used for cultivation, but it also had immeasurable benefits for alchemy, weapon forging, and even tempering the physique. These 9 spiritual springs were also known as spirit auspicious springs, and they benefited the Yi clan greatly. In just a few decades, a large number of dazzling figures emerged. Yi Ling Shuang was one of them. But 10 years ago, when the Heaven's Pivot sacred ground opened up a passageway to the myriad Tao world, they chose to use the Eastern Sea as their foundation to open up branches and expand their forces. Until now, over 100 clans and forces that were originally under the command of the Yi clan in the Eastern Sea had all chosen to submit to the Heaven's Pivot sacred ground. Except for the Yi clan. Although their territory and forces were being nibbled away, the Yi clan could only endure. With the foundation of their clan, it was impossible for them to compete with an ancient orthodoxy like the Heaven's Pivot sacred ground. But recently, the Heaven's Pivot sacred ground had repeatedly sent emissaries to the Yi clan, making it clear that the Yi clan only had 2 choices. They could either choose to submit or give up the spirit auspicious springs, or they would suffer a great calamity. The Yi clan naturally didn't agree, and they had completely offended the Heaven's Pivot sacred ground. Now, the relationship between the 2 parties was already at a state of mutual hostility. Just like this time, Yi Ling Shuang was originally heading to a spiritual island in the Eastern Sea to collect treasure herbs, but she was ambushed on the way, resulting in the scene just now. Knowing all this, Lin Sun couldn't help but frown. It seems that the Heaven's Pivot sacred ground has already decided to act against the Yi clan. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to so brazenly send people to capture you. Yi Ling Shuang said worriedly, "I'm also worried about this. You lead the way. We'll go to the Yi clan first." Lin Sun made a decision. Yi Ling Shuang nodded. Qingtsong City, the Eastern Sea Yi clan's territory. The Wind Cliff Dojo, the Yi clan's largest martial arts training ground. In the past, the Yi clan's disciples would all practice martial arts there, and it was extremely lively. But today, the atmosphere of the Wind Cliff Dojo was extremely stifling. In the early morning, a quasi-emperor elder from the Heaven's Pivot sacred ground called Rong Linha led over 100 clan leaders. On the surface, it was a visit, but in reality, it was a showdown with the Yi clan. At this time, on the left side of the dojo, Rong Linha and a group of clan leaders sat on the ground. On the right side of the dojo sat the important figures of the Yi clan. In the center, the current head of the Yi clan, Yi Xingyo, also Lin Sun's best friend, Yi Qi, sat. "So, if the Yi clan doesn't agree, you will openly seize it?" In the oppressive atmosphere, Yi Qi spoke in a low voice, his face full of coldness and a forceful anger. "It's not openly seize. A place like the 9 springs of spiritual auspicious spirit is originally a blessing nurtured by the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, it didn't belong to the Yi clan." On the left side, Rong Linha stroked his beard and spoke indifferently. He was dressed in a black Taoist robe, and his hair was coiled into a bun. He had the demeanor of an immortal, and his every move revealed a high and mighty dignity. After a pause, he continued, Taoist Yi, time is precious. Please make a decision soon, otherwise what? Yi Chi's eyes flashed with a cold light. Rong Linha smiled slightly and said, Since Taoist Yi can't make a decision, then I'll help you. As soon as he finished speaking, a figure rushed in from outside the Taoist sanctum, looking anxious and uneasy. He said in a trembling voice, Patriarch, something bad has happened. When the seventh child was working in Miaotsue City, he was suddenly taken away by a group of people. What? How could this be? In the row on the right, the big shots of the Yi clan couldn't sit still, and their expressions changed. Only Yi Chi looked at Rong Linha with cold eyes. Did the heavens pivot Holy Land do this? Rong Linha stroked his beard and said with a smile, I've heard that the seventh child of the Yi clan is intelligent and elegant, like a dragon among men. He is regarded as a rare genius of the Yi clan in 1,000 years. I love him, so I invited him to stay in the heavens pivot Holy Land for a few days. You've gone too far. What do you mean by love? It's obviously a kidnapping. You're too despicable. The big shots of the Yi clan were all angry. Their chests heaved, and they gnashed their teeth with hatred. Rong Linha looked indifferent and said, Don't panic, everyone. This is just the beginning. Just the beginning? All of a sudden, the hearts of Yi Chi and the other members of the Yi family sank. Sure enough, it didn't take long before someone stumbled over and shouted, Clan leader, it's bad. Third young miss and fourth young miss have been kidnapped. His voice was filled with fear and anxiety. These words were like a bolt from the blue, and it caused Yi Chi's entire body to tremble. When he looked at the other great figures of the Yi clan, their expressions were extremely unsightly, and they were angered to the point the veins on their foreheads bulged. I heard that the Yi family's third miss and fourth miss are twin sisters. They are born with the countenance of a flower and the countenance of the moon. They are called the twin beauties of heaven and earth. What is rare is that they are still unmarried. Rong Linha spoke again with a warm smile. It just so happens that my heavens pivot sacred ground never lacks young geniuses. I intend to personally choose an ideal husband for these two sisters. What does fellow Taoist Yi think? The meaning behind these words was too malicious. She clearly wanted the two sisters to serve the same person together. All of a sudden, Yi Chi flew into a rage. Mobile version, M. Chapter 2445. Rong Linha, you're courting death. Yi Chi's eyes were red, and his voice seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. The great figures of the Yi clan stood up abruptly while their imposing auras surged, and they seemed as if they would immediately attack once Yi Chi gave the order. However, Rong Linha remained fearless in the face of danger. Everyone, don't be impatient. I've already said that this is just the beginning. If you attack now, I'm afraid you won't be able to see the good show later. There's more? Yi Chi's heart sank. He took a deep breath and waved his hand. Sit down. Let's see what he's up to. Rong Linha smiled. That's more like it. Patriarch, something bad has happened. Deacon 9 and third young master are missing. Suddenly, a loud and panicked cry resounded from outside the Dao Plaza. Although the ninth young master is young, he already has the potential to transform into a dragon. I quite admire him, so I invited him to my humble abode as a guest. Rong Linha casually said. Yi Chi and the other big shots of the Yi family felt their hearts sink. Their hands and feet turned cold. They finally realized the seriousness of the problem. Just like that, bad news would come every few moments, and it was like a heavy blow that caused Yi Chi and the other members of the Yi clan to feel a chill run down their spines, and their expressions became more and more unsightly. On the other hand, Rong Linha seemed as if he didn't notice it, and every time bad news arrived, he would casually comment on it. Every single word he spoke was simply like a blade that fiercely stabbed into the hearts of the Yi clan clansmen. Even the clan heads who had come with Rong Linha couldn't help but be secretly shocked. Too ruthless. This was clearly a premeditated plan to capture the entire younger generation of the Yi family in one fell swoop and use this to force the Yi family to lower their heads. In other words, under such circumstances, how could the Yi clan not lower its head? One had to know that once the younger generation was killed, the Yi family would have no successors for a period of time. In the context of the revival of spirit Qi, even if the clan could survive without the younger generation, they were destined to be abandoned by this era. The atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive, causing everyone to be unable to breathe. A Yi family elder bitterly said, "Patriarch, we can let go of Rue Ling Nine Springs, but those children, we can't let anything happen to them." The other members of the Yi family also looked at Yi Qi with anxious, indignant, and sullen expressions, but they had to accept the reality. Yi Qi was silent. Her face was livid and uncertain. His heart was also shaken. It didn't matter if they lost the spirit spring, but if something happened to the younger generation of the clan, it would be irretrievable. But right at this moment, Rong Linha smiled and said, "Everyone, it's no longer just a matter of the auspicious spirit underworld. If you want those Yus to return unharmed, your Yi clan must lower your head and choose to submit to my heaven's pivot holy ground." As he finished speaking, his voice was powerful and filled with resolution. Bang! Yi Qi stood up abruptly and kicked the table before him into pieces, and he said with a ghastly expression, "Rong Linha, do you intend to force my Yi clan into a corner?" Rong Linha picked up a cup of wine and emptied it before revealing a disdainful expression. "Fellow Taoist Yi, since it has already come to this, I might as well speak frankly. In the eyes of my heaven's pivot sacred ground, your Yi clan is an existence akin to clay chickens and pottery dogs. It is extremely easy for us to annihilate your Yi clan." His gaze swept across the members of the Yi family, and his eyes were cold and indifferent. "If it weren't for the fact that my heaven's pivot holy ground has just arrived here and we still need some manpower to govern this territory, you wouldn't even have the qualifications to negotiate with me." His words were domineering and dignified, and they intimidated everyone present. Yi Qi's expression was gloomy and uncertain. If it was just him, he would rather die. But now, every word he said represented the entire Yi clan, and the life and death of over 1,000 clansmen depended on a single thought of his. This made him have no choice but to endure, and he had no choice but to consider the various consequences. No matter how aggrieved, how angry, how helpless, he could only endure. Now, it is time to make a decision. Rong Linha spoke indifferently, and his eyes were filled with disdain. Yi Qi only felt that his throat was blocked, and he felt an unprecedented heaviness. The survival of the clan was only a year away, and this decision was too difficult. At this moment, suddenly, a restless sound came from outside the training hall. "Miss Ling Shuang, the patriarch and the others are discussing. Get out of the way." Everyone couldn't help but look over. They saw the pretty and dainty Yi Ling Shuang in a red dress walk in hastily, and beside her was an unfamiliar young man. Rong Linha couldn't help but frown. The matter had already reached a critical juncture, but a little girl had disrupted it. This caused him to feel extremely sullen in his heart. But when he saw the young man beside Yi Ling Shuang, Rong Linha's eyes narrowed. What a familiar figure. Could it be the young man from back then? "Ling Shuang, lass, this has nothing to do with you. Why did you barge in? Even if the sky falls, there are still us old fellows to hold it up. Quickly leave. Why did you bring a stranger here? Could it be that you also, the clansmen of the Yi clan, were also astonished, especially when they saw Lin Sun following beside Yi Ling Shuang? Their hearts tightened, and their expressions changed abruptly, thinking that Yi Ling Shuang had been forced to come here. At this moment, Yi Qi, who was sitting in the seat of honor in the center, suddenly stood up as if his butt had been pricked by a needle. He looked at the young man beside Yi Ling Shuang in disbelief, and his mouth was agape. "Fatty, long time no see." Lin Sun smiled, and his eyes were filled with emotion. The Yi Qi of the past was fair and clean, and he was charmingly naive. But now, he was tall and straight, his face resolute, and the corners of his eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. It was as if he had changed into a different person. 100 years had passed, and the affairs of the world had changed. The youth of his old friend had also gradually faded away. Fatty? Everyone present was stunned. This was the head of the Yi clan, the king of the Eastern Sea. Ever since he had taken control of the clan, he had long established an illustrious reputation. Even the elders had to show some respect to him. But now, he had become the fatty in the mouth of a strange young man, and the scene that happened next made everyone dumbfounded. They saw that the dignified clan leader in their hearts was now so excited that his body was trembling, and he spoke incoherently. "Ha! You finally have a conscience. You finally came to see me." His voice spread throughout the entire hall. Everyone turned to look at him. Everyone could see that at this moment, the head of the Yi clan had lost his composure, and his face was filled with ecstasy and excitement. For a moment, they couldn't help but wonder who this strange young man was. Why did he make Yi Qi lose his composure the moment he appeared? Yiling Shuang heaved a sigh of relief. All of this proved that the senior beside her wasn't lying. He was indeed her grandfather's friend. Lin Sun sighed lightly, and his gaze swept across the entire hall. He said, "If I didn't come, how would I know that you're in such a difficult situation now?" His words calmed Yi Qi down. His expression was uncertain, and he shook his head bitterly. "Brother Lin," Lin Sun waved his hand and said, "No need to say more. I already know everything. Since I'm here, leave this matter to me." His words were light and breezy, but the members of the Yi clan were all stunned. What a big tone. That was the heavens' pivot holy ground. Even the Yi clan couldn't raise their heads. How could he solve this problem alone? Even Yiling Shuang, who had brought Lin Sun all the way here, couldn't help but be stunned. What a joke. "Friend, do you know who the people here are? How dare you speak so shamelessly?" Suddenly, an old man in a luxurious robe sneered. He was one of the many clan leaders who had come with Rong Linha. Seeing him speak, the other clan leaders nearby also sneered. This guy clearly didn't see the situation clearly. The ignorant were blissful. Lin Sun glanced at the old man in luxurious robe and said, "A lackey like you dares to bark in front of me?" As soon as he finished speaking, the old man in luxurious robe bled from his 7 orifices. His entire body twitched as he lay on the ground, unable to speak a word. His divine soul had already been shattered. Everyone present was shocked. With just one sentence, he had seriously injured a saint king. Only Yi Qi's expression was normal as he sighed endlessly. This guy was still as overbearing as before. The scene was chaotic and screams rang out everywhere. The expressions of the clan leaders changed, and they panicked and uneasy as they realized how terrifying Lin Sun was. At this moment, Rong Linha suddenly stood up, and his eyes locked onto Lin Sun like lightning. "Lin Sun, it's really you." He recognized that the young man in front of him was clearly Demon God Lin, who had obtained the title of the #1 great saint in the 9 regions decades ago. A young man who was like a legend. However, after not seeing him for so many years, both Lin Sun's temperament and appearance had changed, causing Rong Linha to not dare to recognize him first. Lin Sun. When they heard this name, the whole audience was shocked and stirred up. For the clansmen of Yi family and the patriarchs present, this name was absolutely resounding and legendary. Even after so many years, there were still rumors about him in the Myriad Dao realm. His child was unparalleled in the world, and he was crowned all over the capital. He was the head of the Lin family of heart-cleansing peak, an unparalleled and peerless talent. He had fought in the Empire and killed countless enemies of the Empire. The picturesque landscape was stained with blood. He once fought in the bloodthirsty battlefield, turned the tide with his own strength, destroyed the voodoo barbarian army, and broke the alliance of 10,000 races. Once, there were too many legendary stories about him. However, with the passage of time and the recovery of spiritual qi, the rise of generation after generation of young strongmen, coupled with the disappearance of Lin Sun in the mortal world for many years, made such a legendary figure, like a faded flower, rarely mentioned in recent decades. As the saying goes, talented people appear in every generation, and each of them will lead the way for hundreds of years. The heroes of the past would always be blown away by the wind and rain. No matter how amazing the heroes were, after disappearing for many years, their memories would be diluted, and they would lose the brilliance of the past. Only a few rumors would remain in the world. Who would have thought that this legend, who was the center of attention in the past, would return at this time? For a moment, all eyes turned to Lin Sun with shock. Yiling Shuang was so agitated that her face was flushed red. She clenched her snow-white fists tightly. Ever since she was young, she had heard many stories about Lin Sun from her grandfather. In her heart, there were many seeds of longing and admiration for him. She viewed him as a divinity, yearning for him in her heart. Never would he have thought that the senior who had saved him was actually the legend that he had admired since he was young. P.S. With everyone's help, Goldfish has won second place for Zongheng's Best Author of the Year. There's one more chapter to be updated tonight. Thank you for voting so enthusiastically these past few days. Mobile version, M. Chapter 2446. Roan Lina's heart was in turmoil. For the heavens' pivot holy land, and even the entire ancient desolation realm, Demon God Lin was definitely a frightening character. Just the descendants of the major orthodoxies that he had slaughtered were countless. Even someone as powerful as Yun Qingbai was suppressed by him, especially after winning a great victory in the 9 regions battlefield under his leadership. His reputation in the ancient desolation realm reached an unprecedented level. All living beings in the world admired him. This was for those forces that had enmity with Lin Sun. At that time, Lin Sun had become their sore point, making them restless and unable to eat or sleep in peace. Not long after Lin Sun left the ancient desolation realm and went to the Kunlun ruins, many orthodoxies in the ancient desolation realm who heard the news were relieved, as if they had gotten rid of their inner demons and sent away the plague. But he never thought that after so many years, he would meet this demon-like guy in the mortal world. Then, Roan Linha calmed down. Today was different from the past. Lin Sun might have made great progress in cultivation over the past few decades, but the heavens' pivot holy land was not to be trifled with. Especially with the recovery of spiritual qi in recent years, there have been some amazing changes in the ancient desolation realm. Although it was far from being comparable to the mortal world, it had also made the overall power of the heavens' pivot holy land rise by a lot. Lin Sun, you shouldn't have intervened in this matter, Roan Linha said coldly. After calming down, he showed his graceful and indifferent attitude again. Your era has long passed. In today's world, there are many people who are more dazzling than you were back then. He knew Lin Sun, but Lin Sun didn't know him. It was enough to know that he was an elder of the heavens' pivot holy land. The scene fell silent for a moment. Everyone was surprised and doubtful. What Roan Lin has said was true. In recent decades, all kinds of monsters, geniuses had emerged like mushrooms after the rain. Each of their achievements on the path of cultivation could be said to be extremely heaven-defying and caused a sensation in the world. In comparison, a senior like Lin Sun was already inferior. This made the Yi clan members worry about their gains and losses. However, Lin Sun's eyes were indifferent and calm. Eliminated by the times? This old guy probably didn't know what Lin Sun had done on the ancient way of Starry Sky over the years. He was still judging Lin Sun by the old standards. That was laughable. If the great monarchs on the Starry Sky ancient path heard these words, how would they feel? Seeing no reaction from Lin Sun, Roan Linha panicked inexplicably and said in a low voice, I know that with your resources and reserves, your cultivation has definitely improved greatly in these years that you've been silent and gone missing. But if you really dare to interfere in this matter, then not only will you completely offend my heaven's pivot sacred grounds, you'll even cause those descendants of the younger generation of the Yi clan to suffer. This was an undisguised threat. As expected, as soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of everyone from the Yi clan changed greatly. See you next time. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Not to mention a mere quasi-emperor like you. Even if everyone from the heavenly pivot Holy Land came, they would not be qualified to challenge me. He stretched out his hand and grabbed. Rong Linha's face changed. He didn't expect that Lin Sun would fight without saying a word. Open! He shouted explosively and was just about to attack with his entire strength. Yet he noticed to his astonishment that the strength in his entire body was actually firmly restrained. Not to mention resisting. He didn't even have the strength to raise a finger. Not good. His soul almost came out of his body. The next moment, his whole body was grabbed like a chick, and he knelt down in front of Lin Sun. His knees burst, and the ground cracked. The pain made his vision go black, and he almost fainted. Everyone was completely dumbfounded, and their hearts twitched fiercely. Rong Linha, an elder with real power in the heavens' pivot Holy Land, was an existence of the quasi-emperor realm. In today's myriad Tao world, he was absolutely a hegemon. But at this time, he was suppressed to kneel on the ground in an understatement. This scene deeply shocked the hearts of everyone present. Lin Sun, if you dare to kill me, the younger generation of the Yi clan won't be able to live. Rong Linha hissed, his expression ferocious, no longer graceful and indifferent. Brother Lin. Yi Chi also couldn't sit still, worried that if Lin Sun killed Rong Linha, the young people of the Yi clan would be in trouble. Fatty, when did you become so timid? Don't worry. Lin Sun sneered and pressed his palm down. Bang! Rong Linha's body burst into pieces, turning into ashes and scattering, and his primordial spirit was grasped in Lin Sun's palm for inspection. He actually killed him like this. The clansmen of the Yi clan were scared out of their wits. There was only one thought in their minds. It's over. This was equivalent to completely offending the heavens' pivot Holy Land. And the patriarchs of the various clans who came with Rong Linha were all scared out of their wits, almost peeing in their pants. They probably didn't expect that Lin Sun would be so direct and domineering, killing without a care for how noble Rong Linha's status was. Such an unscrupulous and lawless attitude made them deeply understand how powerful the master of heart-cleansing Peak, who once dominated the Xiao Empire in those years, was. The members of the Yi clan were worried about gains and losses, and only Yi Lingshuang felt extremely happy. Her beautiful eyes lit up, and she said in a crisp voice, "Senior, you killed him well." Yi Chi smiled bitterly. This granddaughter's character was very similar to his when he was young. Unfortunately, he was no longer young. A moment later, Lin Sun twisted his palm, and Rong Linha's primordial spirit collapsed and annihilated. Seeing this, the patriarchs of the various clans were all disheartened and looked gloomy. Rong Linha was dead. How could Lin Sun spare their vassals? Sure enough, Lin Sun waved his sleeve, and all the patriarchs attached to the heavens' pivot Holy Land were suppressed and imprisoned. Then, Lin Sun's figure flashed and soared into the sky, turning into a stream of light and disappearing into the depths of the clouds in an instant. Only one sentence came from afar. "Fatty, I'll leave it to you. I'll go and save people first. I'll be back in a moment." Everyone stared at the place where Lin Sun disappeared, dumbfounded. Even Yi Chi was stunned and speechless. The members of the Yi clan felt like they were dreaming as they looked at the group of clan leaders who were lying on the ground unsteadily. East Sea, Feiyun's spiritual island. This place was originally the residence of a small clan, but as the heavens' pivot Holy Land opened the passage and descended to the mortal world, they immediately occupied the Feiyun spiritual island and regarded it as a stronghold. After many years of operation, the Feiyun spiritual island seemed to have changed its appearance. On the island, there were pavilions, palaces, auspicious light, and dense spiritual qi. It was just like an immortal paradise. Whoosh! A stream of light broke through the air, and Lin Sun's figure appeared. His spiritual awareness spread out and covered the whole Feiyun spiritual island in an instant. 36 large-scale forbidden formations and 108 defensive forbidden formations. In addition, there are 3 quasi-emperor experts and 319 successors. In an instant, The detailed situation of the Feiyun spiritual island appeared in Lin Sun's mind. Combined with the information he got from Tong Lina's spirit, Lin Sun had a clear understanding of the situation here. With a flash, he landed on the Feiyun spiritual island, his clothes fluttering and his hands behind his back. Along the way, Lin Sun saw many successors of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land, as well as many practitioners attached to the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land. But from beginning to end, no one found any trace of Lin Sun. Even the power of the prohibition covering the island seemed to be in vain. Without any reaction, Lin Sun passed through it easily. After a while, an antique palace appeared in Lin Sun's sight. In front of the palace, there were 4 successors of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land. They were talking and didn't notice that a figure passed under their eyes. In the palace, more than a dozen young people fainted on the ground. There were men and women, and their cultivation was all sealed. It was obvious that they were the young generation of Yi family who were caught. Lin Sun waved his sleeve, and these clansmen of Yi family were put away. Then, Lin Sun turned around and left. When he passed by the gate of the palace again, the 4 successors of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land still didn't notice him at all. In fact, with Lin Sun's current cultivation, if he wanted to hide himself, it would be difficult for ordinary emperors to notice him, not to mention the practitioners on the Feiyun spiritual island. Before long, Lin Sun rose into the air. Standing on the clouds, he looked down and said to himself, "Enemies always meet. You can only blame yourself for falling into my hands. You're destined to have this tribulation." He waved his sleeve. Buzzsword howls resounded through the sky like tidewater, while countless glistening strands of sword chi surged out like a torrent, and they covered this expanse of space. The sword chi was so dense that it covered the sky. What a magnificent sword chi! Who is practicing swordsmanship in the clouds? On the Feiyun spiritual island, countless people were alarmed. Looking up, they saw the brilliant sword chi intertwining above the clouds like a river of swords. It was a spectacular scene. However, the next moment, screams of horror sounded. Countless people fled in horror, and the whole island was in a mess. Because the dense strands of sword chi were like a violent storm that descended from the sky, and they tore through the sky and poured down in torrents. Boom! The layers of restrictive formations covering the Feiyun spiritual island, like paper, burst into pieces in an instant, turning into turbulence and spreading. Wherever the sword chi passed, more than 300 successors of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land scattered in different areas of the island were instantly drowned by the brilliant sword chi. In a flash, the color of blood, like a dizzy dye, appeared in large patches, dyeing the Feiyun spiritual island a dazzling scarlet. Who dares to come to the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land and make trouble? In a palace, a strong quasi-emperor who was meditating suddenly got up and rushed out of the palace in a flash. But as soon as he appeared outside the palace, he was cut by a dazzling sword chi and was instantly drowned by the bright sword chi. He turned into ashes. In less than 3 seconds, the sword chi fell like a downpour. On the whole island, all the strong people of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land were killed, and the sky was dyed with blood. Only those who were under the command of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land were lucky enough to escape. But when they saw the bloody purgatory-like death scene, they were all paralyzed with fear. In the clouds, Lin Sun didn't even look at it and moved away. It was only 10 minutes until he returned to the Wind Cliff Taoist field of Yi family. P.S. More updates and sent over. Chapter 2447. 15 minutes later. For Yi Chi, he had just ordered his clansmen to imprison the patriarchs of the various clans. Then he held a short meeting with the senior members of the Yi family nervously. The content of the meeting was very simple. Could Lin Sun successfully rescue the younger generation of the Yi family who had been captured by the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land? Everyone had no idea what was going to happen, and they were all in a mess. Even Yi Lingshuang, who admired Lin Sun very much, was not confident. The affairs of the world had changed. The situation in the lower realms had already undergone a tremendous change, and it was completely different from the past. The most obvious change was that in the mortal world, the kings of the longevity realm were regarded as the top group of people in the world. But now, there were countless kings in the mortal world like carps crossing the river. The real masters who could summon the wind and summon the rain were above the saint realm. They were the quasi-emperors who could shake the world with a stomp of their feet. Moreover, in the past 10 years, the recovery of the spiritual chi in the world had become more and more powerful. Many people suspected that the era of breaking through to the emperor realm would come soon. Under such circumstances, could Lin Sun, who had disappeared for many years, continue the legend of the past? No one dared to jump to a conclusion. In such a tense and uneasy atmosphere, Lin Sun's figure descended from the sky. Yi Qi and the others were all stunned and caught off guard. Lin Sun had returned in less than 15 minutes. Brother Lin, did something happen on the way? Yi Qi couldn't help asking. The others also looked at Lin Sun. They're just a bunch of chickens and dogs. How can they cause any trouble? Lin Sun smiled and waved his sleeve. The younger generation of the Yi family who had been rescued by him appeared in front of everyone. All of a sudden, there was an uproar. Everyone's eyes widened and they stood up excitedly. When they looked at Lin Sun again, their eyes were completely different. How could they not know what had happened at this time? In 15 minutes, he had galloped 80,000 miles back and forth and trampled the Feiyun Spirit Island. Senior, you are really a god. You can't be estimated by the world. Yiling Shuang shouted excitedly. Yi Qi rubbed her head fiercely and said grumpily, "What, senior? This is your grandfather's elder brother." Yiling Shuang's eyes gleamed as she sweetly smiled. Grandpa Lin. For the first time in his life, Lin Sun felt the feeling of being a grandfather. His lips twitched imperceptibly, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He surveyed Yiling Shuang. With a flick of his finger, an inheritance of the great Tao transformed into an imprint that flowed into her mind. Little girl, this law of Tao is more suitable for you. Take it as a greeting gift. In the future, you must train hard and strive to surpass your grandfather. Lin Sun said with a smile. Then he called Yi Qi over and left the Taoist field. He planned to talk to Yi Qi alone about something. Just how many changes have occurred in the lower realms over the years? And what is the current situation like? Lin Sun asked in a quiet palace. Yi Qi seemed to have expected Lin Sun's question. He sighed and slowly described the situation in the mortal world in the past decades. Around 50 years ago, the heavens and the earth underwent a tremendous change. Spiritual energy grew madly, and the entire lower realms moved towards a complete recovery. It was like a volcano that had been silent for eternity had broken through its shackles, and it suddenly erupted with boundless potential and vitality. Be it wild animals or plants, their strength began to soar. Especially for those practitioners, it was 10 times or even 100 times easier for them to cultivate and comprehend Tao than before. Their cultivation also rose steadily like mushrooms after a spring rain. 50 years ago, a king at the 9th level of the longevity tribulation could already laugh proudly at the whole world, aspire to the top of the world, and shock the world. 50 years later, it was the emperor-to-be who could influence the world. The recovery of spiritual energy also changed the structure of the world. In the past, the Xiao Empire was ruled by the royal family and supported by the forces of the aristocratic families. However, with the recovery of spiritual energy, various orthodoxies from the ancient desolation realm had come to the lower realms to expand their forces in the past 50 years. These ancient orthodoxies were all giants in the ancient desolation realm. Over the years, each of them had gained a firm foothold in the lower realms and firmly controlled many famous mountains and blessed lands. Until now, the situation where the Xiao Empire ruled the world alone no longer existed, and the world had entered the stage of competition among the major forces. According to Yi Qi, the top forces in the lower realms were the ancient orthodoxies from the ancient desolation realm, such as the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land, the Holy Land of Spirit Treasure, the Heaven-Reaching Sword Sect, the Xuandu Taoism Sect, and the Xianwen Sword House. Next to them were the forces of the Sea Clans in the Soul Oblivion Sea. As for the aristocratic families in the territory of the Xiao Empire, they had already declined in the decades of competition. Most of them had chosen to surrender and attach themselves to the orthodoxies of the ancient Desolation realm. Speaking of this, Yi Chi let out a long sigh. Brother Lin, if you hadn't come in time, I'm afraid the Yi family in the East Sea would have to bow our heads and surrender if we wanted to survive. Lin frowned. How was the Lin family now? This was what he cared about the most. After a moment of silence, Yi Chi said, Brother Lin, about the Lin family. His expression was uncertain, and he seemed to be very hesitant. Lin Sun's heart sank. He narrowed his black eyes and asked, What on earth happened? Alas! Yi Chi let out a long sigh and said, Brother Lin, the Lin family is still a mystery. Don't be impulsive after hearing it. Lin Sun looked straight at Yi Chi and said, If you keep hiding it, I'll leave immediately. Yi Chi knew he couldn't hide it anymore, so he gritted his teeth and told the whole story. 50 years ago, as the heart of the Xiao Empire, the Forbidden City also had a great change after the recovery of spiritual qi. It was the most remarkable place in the world, far beyond the reach of other places. First of all, the Forbidden City expanded more than 1,000 times in just 100 days. The spiritual qi of the Great Way broke out like landslides and tsunamis, giving birth to all living things and giving birth to many incredible phenomena. Then, spiritual mountains and blessed lands rose up one after another. Each spiritual mountain was rare in the world, like a holy land outside the world, extremely sacred. In addition, many folded spaces and secret realms appeared one after another. Such a change caused a sensation in the world and attracted the attention of many forces. From then on, the Forbidden City became the world-famous, universal Tao Holy Land. However, fortune and misfortune went hand in hand. Because of the amazing opportunity that broke out in the Forbidden City, all the orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation realm coveted and envied it. In order to compete for and occupy this universal Tao Holy Land, countless bloody conflicts broke out over the years. Until now, all the famous mountains, blessed lands, secret realms and caves in the Forbidden City had been occupied by the orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation realm. As for the aristocratic families that originally lived in the Forbidden City, strength, the annihilation of sex, the annexation of sex, the submission of sex, hearing this, Lin Sun's eyes were filled with chilling coldness. Yi Chi hurriedly said, Brother Lin, don't worry. Before the upheaval and turmoil in the Forbidden City, the core members of the royal family of the Empire and the clansmen of Lin family of Heart-Cleansing Peak disappeared mysteriously. Disappeared? Lin Sun was stunned. Yi Chi nodded. Yes, this matter is known to the world. So far, no one knows where the royal family and the clansmen of Lin family have gone and whether they are dead or alive. Lin Sun's black eyes flickered. Is there any news? Yi Chi shook his head. There are many rumors, but they all prove to be false. This has become a mystery in the world today. After a pause, he hesitated and said, However, as far as I know, some forces related to your Lin family, such as Green Deer School, the commune of spiritual tattooists, and Golden Hall, have almost been destroyed. Lin Sun felt an irrepressible anger welling up in his heart, and his face became gloomy. Green Deer School and the commune of spiritual tattooists were both founded by Master Lu. When Lin Sun was young, he had received a lot of help from these two forces. Golden Hall was a business established by his friend Gu Liang and his father Gu Yinping when he set foot in Xiao Empire for the first time in his life. Many years ago, with the painstaking efforts of Gu Yinping and Gu Liang, Golden Hall had already become a famous business in the empire, and its fame and foundation were comparable to that of Keystone Business. But Lin Sun didn't expect that when he returned to the mortal world this time, Green Deer School, the commune of spiritual tattooists, and Golden Hall had all suffered. Who did it? Lin Sun's voice was calm, but his eyes were terrifyingly cold. Yi Chi said bitterly, There are many forces who did this, and they are all from the orthodoxies of the ancient Desolation realm. It said that all this happened because of you, me? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Yes, it said that you have offended those orthodoxies in the ancient desolation realm. After learning that those forces in the Forbidden City who had a close relationship with you, they all took revenge. Speaking of this, Yi Chi murmured, fortunately, the imperial family and the clansmen of your Lin family have disappeared mysteriously. Otherwise, before he finished his words, he suddenly held his breath. Lin Sun suddenly released a terrifying and boundless killing intent, which covered the sky and the earth, oppressing the void into disorder and wailing. In a trance, there seemed to be a mountain of corpses, a sea of blood, a sinking of all living beings, a mournful roar of the great emperor, and the collapse of the sun and the moon. At this moment, Yi Chi's state of mind was about to collapse. Fortunately, this unimaginably terrifying killing intent was restrained in just a moment, which made Yi Chi heave a long sigh of relief. But his clothes had been soaked with cold sweat. Yi Chi couldn't help but be shocked. How high had Lin Sun's cultivation reached today? Fatty, don't leak the news of what happened today, and don't let them know that I'm back. Lin Sun's face was calm and emotionless, but his eyes were frighteningly cold. Yi Chi suddenly understood that if those orthodoxies of the ancient desolation realm knew that Lin Sun appeared in the mortal world and flattened the heavens' pivot holy land in 10 minutes, they would definitely be vigilant and take precautions. In order to deal with Lin Sun, it was very likely that they would arrest more people related to Lin Sun in order to threaten him. Chapter 2448. On the same day, Yi Chi ordered to block all news related to Lin Sun. Both Yi Chi and Lin Sun knew that what happened on Feiyun Island couldn't be concealed forever. However, it was enough that no one knew it was Lin Sun who did it for the time being. On the same day, Lin Sun set off for the Forbidden City of Xiao Empire. Whoosh! In the depths of the clouds, a shadowless streamer was flying at a high speed. Even though Lin Sun's cultivation had been suppressed to the first level of the Great Circle of the fourth level of the Emperor Realm, he was still able to resist the pressure from the heaven and earth. But Lin Sun's speed was still faster and faster. In the end, he was like a faintly discernible light spot. Every time he moved, he just flashed in the void and disappeared thousands of meters away. Shriek! In the sky, there were many fierce birds, some of which were thousands of meters long, flying in flocks. Seeing a human intrude into their territory, they were dissatisfied and wanted to teach him a lesson. But they were left far behind by Lin Sun. Those who dared to stand in front of them were smashed into pieces, no matter how powerful they were. Lin Sun's heart was burning like a ball of fire. Lin Sun's heart sank when he learned that the Lin family and members of the imperial family had disappeared mysteriously. The news that Green Deer School, the commune of spiritual tattooists, and the Golden Hall made Lin Sun's killing intent surge. Years ago, he traveled alone in the ancient desolation realm. He was in a difficult situation with enemies all over the world. Rising in blood and killing, he became enemies with many ancient orthodoxies. After the end of the Battle of 9 Regions and his first great victory for the ancient desolation realm, no one dared to underestimate him in the entire ancient desolation realm. Even orthodoxies, such as the Heaven-Reaching Sword sect and the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land, could only swallow their anger and didn't dare to suppress and target him as before. But Lin Sun still didn't expect that these old enemies would destroy the Green Deer School and other forces after they arrived in the mortal world because of Lin Sun alone. Do you really think that I disappeared? Lin Sun's killing intent was rising, but his eyes became calmer and more indifferent. In the past, it was only tens of thousands of miles from the Yi family in the East Sea to the Forbidden City. However, after the Spirit Qi revival, the entire Xiao Empire's territory expanded tenfold or even hundredfold, becoming completely different from before. With Lin Sun's current speed, it took him several hours to get close to the original area of the Forbidden City. Along the way, he passed by many cities and sensed many hidden auras in those cities. There were many martial saints, and the strongest among them was even a quasi-emperor. On the other hand, the wilderness was even more dangerous, and it revealed a primitive scene. Luxuriant mountain ranges rose and fell, and ferocious flying beasts and demon beasts could be seen everywhere. Between the mountains and rivers, monkeys and tigers roared. Lin Sun even saw a green centipede thousands of meters long, with its body coiled up like a mountain ridge, drinking dew and eating the rosy clouds with a solemn appearance. There were also great demons with monstrous arrogance fighting and killing in the wilderness, stirring up the winds and clouds. Their goal was to seize territory. Besides this, there were numerous other demon clans that each occupied an area of land, and they seemed as if they were kings and possessed formidable forces. Almost all the demon leaders who occupied a part of the mountains and rivers were at the level of quasi-emperor, and the weakest one was at least at the level of martial saint. Such a scene did not exist in the Xiao Empire in the past at all. However, along the way, Lin Sun didn't see any real martial saint. The spirit Qi revival is subverting and changing everything in this world. Lin Sun sighed. In the past, the king of the longevity tribulation realm could be regarded as the overlord in the Xiao Empire. Now, any great demon could rival a martial saint. While thinking, Lin Sun saw the Forbidden City in the distance. 50 years was an extremely long time for the largest imperial city of the Xiao Empire. Today's Forbidden City had changed so much that it was beyond Lin Sun's imagination. Looking from high in the sky, he saw many divine mountains that were tens of thousands of meters high rising from the ground. The original highest observatory in the Forbidden City now looked extremely small in front of these towering divine mountains. The entire city was like a small world of its own, and its territory was extremely vast. Brilliant, auspicious light was steaming between heaven and earth, and the airflow of the Great Way was like a falling waterfall rolling over the Forbidden City. Looking from a distance, it was like the residence of the gods, sacred and vast. Even Lin Sun couldn't help being surprised. He had seen many extraordinary cities and worlds in the starry sky over the years, but it was rare to see such a scene as the Forbidden City. It could be seen why the Forbidden City was regarded as the holy land of all Tao again. The transformation of 50 years made the former imperial capital completely different. When Lin Sun was thinking about it, he turned around and floated down to the Forbidden City. Heart-cleansing Peak was the ancestral land of Lin family, which ranked among the 72 peaks of aristocratic families. Before the Spirit Qi revival, it was also a famous treasure land in the world. Lin Sun just didn't know what it was like now. In the Forbidden City, it was prosperous and prosperous. Holy mountains stood in the sky. Under the holy mountains, there were cobweb-like streets. On both sides of the streets, various buildings were arranged in a row. The bustling crowd shuttled back and forth like a surging stream. Rather than calling this a city, it would be more accurate to call it a world, as the territory was simply too vast. When Lin Sun walked into it, he almost doubted that he had gone to the wrong place. The familiar scene in the past had long been gone. He took a deep breath, suppressed the surging emotions in his heart, and walked forward calmly. He spread out his divine awareness and constantly sensed. Today's Forbidden City was no longer the place he was familiar with. It became extremely strange. He needed to know something about the situation first. All the way, there were cultivators everywhere. Their cultivation ranged from the lower 5 realms, the King Realm to the Saint Realm. There were even many hidden auras of quasi-emperors. Among those cultivators, there were demonic beasts in human form and sea creatures from the Soul Oblivion Sea. They were openly shuttling through the city. On the streets, all kinds of auctions, elixir shops, Taoist rites, treasure pavilions could be seen everywhere, and the scale was extremely astonishing. In today's Forbidden City, even the ordinary people who couldn't cultivate had a whole body of essence, qi, and spirit. Their lifespan was prolonged, which was completely different from the past. 50 years of spiritual qi recovery, 50 years of turbulence. Through all kinds of conversations and discussions, Lin Sun finally filtered out some of the information he needed one by one. In today's Forbidden City, The real masters were the heaven-reaching sword sect, heaven's pivot holy land, spiritual treasure holy land, Xuandu Taoism sect, and more than a dozen major forces in the ancient desolation domain. After many years of competition and confrontation, 10 years ago, these major forces reached an agreement with each other that they would no longer fight and confront each other within the scope of the Forbidden City. This was done to avoid conflicts. Clashing with each other would result in both sides exhausting their own strength. The losses outweighed the gains. After all, with the recovery of spiritual qi in the world, there would be more and more opportunities as time went by. If they were to fight to the death for territory now, it was obviously not worth it. Because of this agreement, which was similar to a truce agreement, the Forbidden City became extremely prosperous in the past 10 years. However, the orthodoxies in the ancient desolation domain didn't live in peace, but still went all out to fight for territory. However, the way of fighting for territory had changed. Each of them selected a group of young overmatches to discuss and learn from each other. The winner could win some territory for the sect behind him. In this way, large-scale bloody conflicts between these major forces could be avoided. For example, if a new folded secret realm appeared in the Forbidden City, then in order to compete for the control of the folded secret realm, these orthodoxies in the ancient desolation domain would select a group of young elites to compete for the control of the folded secret realm. The final winner would win the folded secret realm for their sections. It was worth mentioning that outsiders could also participate in the discussion, but the conditions were extremely harsh. That was, they had to defeat the opponents selected by each orthodoxy in the ancient desolation domain. This kind of challenge was undoubtedly tantamount to killing the hope of other overmatches. Think about it. Who in the world could defeat the opponents carefully selected by the major forces in the ancient desolation domain one by one? To say the least, even if they really won a secret realm and won a cave residence, who could enjoy this blessing under the eyes of the orthodoxies in the ancient desolation domain? It's really ugly. Lin Sun sneered in his heart. The recovery of spiritual qi was originally a great opportunity for all living beings in the lower world to change their fate. But now, it was occupied and controlled by the orthodoxies in the ancient desolation domain. They were overbearing and didn't allow others to touch it. It was obvious that they didn't put the people in the lower world in their eyes at all. Let's go to heart-cleansing peak first. Shaking his head, Lin Sun went straight forward. He seemed to be walking leisurely, but in fact, he was extremely fast. In less than a quarter of an hour, Lin Sun came to the area where Heart-Cleansing Peak used to be. However, when he saw the appearance of Heart-Cleansing Peak, his expression suddenly changed. The cold light in his eyes burst out as if it could pierce the sky. Damn it! How could it become like this? Heart-Cleansing Peak, which once attracted the attention of the world, was now collapsed and overgrown with weeds. It became a deserted place. Looking carefully, there were ruins everywhere, as if it had been bombarded by a terrible force. It should be known that Lin Sun had set many restriction formations here in those years, which made it like an iron wall. But it was obvious that Heart-Cleansing Peak was destroyed in the years after the recovery of spiritual qi. Lin Sun walked closer and watched silently. Compared with other places in the Forbidden City, Heart-Cleansing Peak, which had collapsed like a ruin, was particularly barren and dilapidated. Lin Sun stood there with a cold face. His spiritual awareness spread like a tide and explored carefully. Unfortunately, he found nothing. Only a few idle cultivators were walking in the nearby area, pointing at the ruins and gossiping about it. P.S. Today, I wrote a small play about Lin Sun and Chen Shi, the protagonist of Rune Emperor, on the WeChat account, and the response was surprisingly good. If you don't follow the WeChat account of Goldfish, you can open WeChat, search for it, add your followers, and check the historical messages. Chapter 2449. Have you seen it? This is the place where Lin family lived. After the recovery of spiritual qi, Lin family disappeared strangely. Even Heart-Cleansing Peak was destroyed. An old man with a child looked sad. If the young Peak Lord was here, how could thou empire be destroyed by those in the ancient desolation realm? Speaking of this, the old man shut up. Obviously, he was afraid of talking too much, but there was a trace of anger on his face. In the past, the head of Lin family was crowned all over the capital, like the sun in the sky, shining alone in the world. But in the years after his disappearance, the glory of Lin family has long been turned into ruins. Some people sighed and lamented the impermanence of the world. Lin's son, crowned all over the capital? If he was so powerful, how could he let his ancestral land be destroyed? Some people sneered disdainfully. In today's world, heroes and talents are emerging in large numbers. The era of Lin's son is already a thing of the past. The cultivators in the vicinity gesticulated in disgust, and they'd utterly not noticed that a tall young man in the distance had a gaze that was piercingly cold like ice. Granddad Joan, Mr. Vulture, young Ku, if you meet with an accident, I will let all your enemies die with you. Lin's son murmured in his heart. At this moment, a horrible killing intent emerged from Lin's son, rushing straight to the sky, tearing the clouds and covering the sky. It was like the eternal darkness came. Countless people in the Forbidden City were shocked. When they looked up, they could only vaguely see the horrible killing intent like black clouds covering the sky, like the end of the world. What a horrible killing intent. Many people were trembling in their hearts, especially some strong people with profound cultivation and the cultivation of the quasi-emperor realm. Their eyes suddenly became extremely solemn. Now, the world was changing dramatically and the spiritual chi was recovering. The cultivation of the person who could release such a horrible and boundless killing intent must be above the quasi-emperor realm, or even stronger. Such a person could shake the whole mortal world by stamping his feet at will. For a time, many practitioners in the Forbidden City could not calm down. Today's Forbidden City seemed to be prosperous and peaceful, but in fact, it had already been full of ups and downs. Now a mysterious strong man suddenly appeared and released his killing intent in the Forbidden City, which made everyone horrified. The great orthodoxies of the ancient desolation realm that were entrenched in the city had agreed that no one was allowed to use force in the city. However, this killing intent was so unscrupulous that it might touch the reverse scale of the forces of the ancient desolation realm. In particular, some old people's pupils shrank. They recognized that the place where the killing intent rushed out was the heart-cleansing peak of Lin family, which had attracted the attention of the world in those years. At the same time, many cultivators rushed over successively with the intention of finding out exactly what was going on. Unfortunately, when they arrived, the killing intent rising from the sky and shattering the wind and clouds had already disappeared. Even Lin's son's figure had disappeared into thin air. Near the ruins of Heart-Cleansing Peak, there were only some figures who were paralyzed by fear. When they woke up, they didn't know where the killing intent came from. After the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, Lin's son came to the original location of the Imperial Palace. In the past, Zhao Yuanji sat here, looking up to the world and deterred the world, until the end of the domain of despair in the ancient desolation realm. Lin's son returned to Xiao Empire. At that time, without Zhao Yuanji and his wife, the Imperial Palace changed dramatically and Heart-Cleansing Peak of Lin family was also hit. In the end, Lin's son assisted Zhao Jingxian to seize the imperial power and pacify the world at one stroke. The scourge of the demon beasts was solved. Lin family of Heart-Cleansing Peak also became an aristocratic family that attracted the attention of the world. It was also at that time that Lin's son defeated the Zhuo family and the Qin family, one of the 7 aristocratic families, and was crowned as the first person in Xiao Empire. In fact, when Lin's son thought about it carefully, he found that as early as the last time he returned to Xiao Empire, there had been many changes in the mortal world. For example, in the territory of the Empire, there were many demon beasts, and the spiritual chi between heaven and earth became much richer, just like a sign before the complete recovery of spiritual chi. But Lin's son didn't expect that when he came back again, the world had become different. At this time, he stood in front of a majestic mountain range. The mountains stood like a giant halberd in the sky. The whole mountain range was filled with purple, auspicious light, sacred and solemn. This was the place where the imperial palace was originally located. Yet now, it had transformed into a boundless mountain range that was completely coiled with violet divine radiance, and it was brilliant, vast, and extremely magnificent. There was no trace of the imperial palace at all. Zhao Xingye, Zhao Tailai, they are all gone. Lin Sun was stunned. Yi Qi once said that when the spiritual qi recovered, the imperial royal family and the Lin family of heart-cleansing peak all disappeared, which became a big mystery in the world. Now it seemed that all this was true. This is the residence of the holy land of spirit treasure. Outsiders, leave quickly. A loud shout sounded from a mountain gate in the distance. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep. He took a deep look at the purple mountain range occupied by the holy land of spirit treasure, and then turned away. On the bustling street, there was an endless stream of traffic. The world of mortals was rolling. Lin Sun walked alone in surprise. With the changes of the world, the vast forbidden city had long become strange. Even the fate of his relatives and friends in the past was unknown, especially when he saw that heart-cleansing peak, which he had painstakingly built in the past, turned into a ruin when he returned. Lin Sun's reverse scale seemed to be touched, and his killing intent surged uncontrollably. The changes in the imperial palace made Lin Sun feel a kind of unspeakable boredom. He didn't care about these. He only cared about where his relatives and friends went. After a long time, Lin Sun's eyes calmed down. From now on, I should inquire about the news first. It's impossible for the people of Lin family to disappear for no reason. There must be other mysteries in it. I can't let go of the enemies who destroyed Heart-Cleansing Peak. The affairs of Green Deer School, the commune of spiritual tattooists and Golden Hall, must be thoroughly ended. Lin Sun's spiritual awareness had been searching silently when he was thinking. Time flew. Although the Forbidden City had changed a lot in 50 years, Lin Sun was not worried about not finding clues. With his current strength, it wouldn't take more than 2 days for him to investigate this city that was comparable to a world from the inside out. Just 2 hours later, Lin Sun found some familiar faces who had practiced in Green Deer School and worked in the commune of spiritual tattooists. But after 50 years, Green Deer School and the commune of spiritual tattooists had long disappeared. How could he find any real old friends? What he found at this time was just a few big cats and small cats. He didn't know anything at all. He only knew that many years ago, after the orthodoxies of the ancient desolation domain entered the Forbidden City, Green Deer School, the commune of spiritual tattooists, and other forces were destroyed and disappeared. There was no valuable clue at all. But Lin Sun was not in a hurry. He could go to those orthodoxies of the ancient desolation domain and inquire about the news from their mouths. Along the way, Lin Sun walked in large and small areas of the Forbidden City without hiding his appearance. But no one recognized him, the head of Heart-Cleansing Peak who had shocked the world in those days. At most, some people stopped occasionally and felt that Lin Sun was a little familiar, but they were not sure at all. Time was the most ruthless. All the outstanding figures, unparalleled heroes, and those who stood on the top of the world would be blown away by the passage of time. The former Lin Sun only existed in people's memory, like a faded flower. Nowadays, a group of dazzling geniuses, talents, and influential figures would emerge every once in a while in the Forbidden City and even in the whole mortal world, attracting the attention of the world. Lin Sun didn't care about this at all. Although the mortal world had undergone drastic changes, there was no one who was really worthy of his attention so far. Suddenly, Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. On the street in the distance, a gorgeous chariot galloped past. When Lin Sun sensed the people in it with his spiritual awareness, he immediately saw a familiar face. Her eyebrows were as black as ink, and her eyes were like cold blades. Her beautiful face revealed a unique, fierce aura. Qi Tsame of the Qi family. Long ago, the Qi family ranked among the 7 top aristocratic families in the Forbidden City and was extremely noble. When Lin Sun entered the Forbidden City for the first time when he was young, he was blocked and chased by this woman. When Lin Sun returned to the ancient Desolation territory last time, he destroyed the two top aristocratic families. Qi Lingxiao, the head of the Qi family, took the initiative to go to the Lin family to beg for mercy. After paying a great price, he was lucky to escape. Now many years had passed. Although the appearance of Qi Sangmei, the daughter of the head of the Qi family, had not changed much, her cultivation had long been different from before. She had the power of the great saint realm. The third child of Keystone Business is dishonest again. Miss, we can kill him directly. He is just a waste. It's a waste of food to keep him alive. An old man in a black robe who drove the chariot complained. It was this voice that attracted Lin Sun's attention. The third child of Keystone Business. Wasn't that sure you? Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly and followed him quietly. The chariot flew fast with Qi Sangmei. After half an hour, it stopped in front of a remote street. Qi Sangmei stepped down from the chariot and went straight into the depths of a narrow and dark street. The old man in a black robe who drove the chariot stayed in place and waited, glancing around vigilantly. Unfortunately, it was impossible for him to notice that a figure had already passed under his eyes. The narrow street seemed very shabby, but in Lin Sun's spiritual awareness, this street was arranged with a strict defense force. The dark corners were all guarded by sentries. In addition, there were many prohibitions. If it was an ordinary person, he would be discovered at the first time when he approached this street. But in Lin Sun's eyes, such a defense force was completely decorative. Finally, Qi Sangmei arrived in front of a dilapidated courtyard at the end of the street. With a gentle push, the closed door was pushed open. Qi Sangmei walked in. The door of the courtyard closed silently. Before long, Lin Sun also appeared. He put his hands behind his back, looked around for a moment, and finally stood there. His spiritual awareness swept into this courtyard silently. Chapter 2450. In the courtyard, a dim yellow lamp hung on the treetop, sprinkling mottled light and shadow. An old man with a bent back was trying his best to fetch water in front of a well. He was emaciated, his hair was dirty and messy, and his clothes were shabby. Even though he was just fetching a bucket of water, it seemed extremely strenuous for him. His figure swayed. His hands gripped the rope tightly. The veins on the back of his hands bulged, and his forehead was dripping with sweat. He staggered, and the rope in his hand fell quickly. The bucket tied by the rope fell back to the bottom of the well. He fell on the edge of the well in embarrassment. His chest rose and fell sharply. He got up and was about to fetch water again when he heard a cold voice. I heard that you are not honest again. What tricks do you want to play this time? Suicide? Or hunger strike? The old man's body was stiff. He didn't look back. He said in a hoarse voice, What? Qi Sangmei, are you here to laugh at me again? Qi Sangmei stood in the distance. Her eyes were as cold as a knife. You are just a waste who has lost all your cultivation. If you don't have some value, do you think you can still live until now? The old man was silent. He held the rope and continued to fetch water. Qi Sangmei said, You are very smart. I'm afraid that you have guessed that the spring water in this well has undergone some changes recently. There is abundant spiritual energy in it. If you drink it all the time, it can not only prolong your life, but also wash the filth in your daughter's body. Maybe it can also help her refine the foundation of cultivation. The old man's hands trembled. He seemed to realize something and said, What are you going to do this time? Qi Sangmei looked indifferent. Your daughter is 5 years old. I intend to take her away to help her wash her marrow and get rid of her mortal body. Then I will teach her cultivation and strive for the opportunity to enter the holy land of Lingbao to cultivate in the future. How dare you? The old man turned around with a furious look. Qi Sangmei laughed. Don't worry. I won't let your daughter know that the holy land of Lingbao is the culprit who destroyed Keystone Business and ruined her father's future. She will definitely live a good life in the future. The cruelest thing in this world is to take the enemy as your father and the enemy as your teacher. When he heard this, the old man simply seemed as if he was struck by lightning, and his eyes were bloodshot as he suddenly charged towards the room at the side. Even if I die, I won't let you take Linlang away." He roared like a madman. Bang! Cheat Song Mei kicked him to the side and walked straight into the room. When she came out of the room, she was holding a 5 or 6-year-old girl who seemed to be asleep. Even though her clothes were ragged, it could still be seen that this little girl was like a sculpture carved from jade. Her skin was snow white, and she was extremely cute and beautiful. "Sure, Linlang. Well, her surname will be Chi from now on," Cheat Songmei said, and walked out of the courtyard. The old man felt like a knife was twisted in his heart. He rolled and crawled. His voice was like crying, "Cheat Songmei, come to me. Come to me." Cheat Songmei laughed. "Don't worry. I said that you are still valuable. Sooner or later, you will be useful." After that, she carried the little girl and walked out of the courtyard. Behind her, the old man was so angry that his eyes almost popped. He roared, "Cheat Songmei, sooner or later, I will destroy your Chi family." "Really?" Cheat Songmei showed a contemptuous sneer and didn't care about it at all. However, when she pushed open the gate of the courtyard, she was stunned. At some point in time, a tall figure had silently stood outside the courtyard door. When she saw the appearance of this figure, Cheat Songmei was stunned at first, and then her face changed suddenly. Almost out of an instinctive awareness when facing extreme danger, she put her palm on the neck of the little girl in her arms at the first time. Then, she stared at the figure in bewilderment. "You? How could you possibly appear here?" It had been almost 50 years since the last time she saw this man. It didn't seem to be a long time, but the mortal world had already undergone great changes, which made her believe many times that the man in those years should not be able to reappear in the world. But she didn't expect to see him at this time. It was Lin Sun who stood outside the gate. Lin Sun's eyes were indifferent, and he said, "If I didn't come back, I wouldn't know that the chief family who begged me for forgiveness like a dead dog has become a despicable dog now." Cheat Songmei's face flashed with shame and indignation, and then she said coldly, "Lin Sun, the mortal world has changed a long time ago. You may be unparalleled in the past, but now, who in this world will pay attention to you?" After a pause, she seemed to have found enough confidence. "I advise you to calm down. My Chi family is now the most important force in the holy land of spirit treasure. If you offend us, you are doomed to be in big trouble." Lin Sun glanced at her and said, "I thought that after I let go of your Chi family, you should know what to do and what not to do, even if you can't change your mind. Unfortunately, your performance really disappointed me." He took a step forward. "What do you want to do? Believe it or not, I will strangle this girl. She is the daughter of your brother Shiryu." Cheat Songmei's palm and fingers exerted force. It seemed that as long as Lin Sun moved again, she would not hesitate to crush the girl's neck. Lin Sun stretched out his hand. An invisible force emerged and imprisoned Chi Songmei's whole body. She was shocked and found that she even had no strength to lift a finger. Then, the girl in her arms fell steadily into Lin Sun's arms. "Lin Lang, how can such a good name be surnamed Chi?" Lin Sun sighed. "Lin Sun, don't you understand? Now the Forbidden City is not a place where you can behave atrociously." Cheat Songmei couldn't calm down at all and screamed. Crack! An invisible slap hit Chi Songmei's beautiful and cold face. Her body rotated and fell to the ground with a thud. Her cheeks were red and swollen with blood. She screamed and struggled to get up, but she couldn't exert any strength at all, which made her panic as if she had fallen into an ice cave. She had the cultivation of a great saint now, but in front of Lin Sun, she had no power to resist at all. She was as small as an ant and was trampled at will. However, Lin Sun ignored her and walked towards the skinny old man with dirty hair and beard in the distance. The old man sat paralyzed on the ground as if he had been greatly stimulated. He was delirious and whimpered painfully, "Lin Lang. Lin Lang, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." He seemed to be crazy with his face covered with dust and tears. He didn't notice it until Lin Sun came to him. Looking at him like this, Lin Sun suddenly felt unspeakable pain in his heart, as if he was stabbed by a knife. Was this still the handsome third child of Keystone Business? Or the high-spirited Shiryu who talked and laughed with him? Exactly what sort of torture had he experienced in these past few years to turn him into such an extremely miserable state? Lin Sun only felt that his chest was blocked. He took a deep breath and said, "Brother Sure, I'm back." With the power of Tao, his voice was like a light that reached people's hearts. His words dispelled the anxiety, despair, resentment, and madness in the old man's heart and made him calm down gradually. He looked up with difficulty and stared at the familiar figure in front of him, as if he couldn't believe it. After a while, he suddenly hugged Lin Sun's leg and burst into tears. He cried heart-wrenchingly, like a lonely and desperate prisoner. He tightly grasped a glimmer of hope and vented his inner pain at this moment. Lin Sun felt a lump in his throat. A man didn't easily shed tears until he was sad. He didn't expect that after 50 years, the handsome Shiryu had fallen into such a situation. He was even worse than a beggar. "Lin Sun, it's really you. It's really you." After a long time, Shiryu calmed down a lot. His lips trembled and he grinned. His dim eyes were full of joy from the bottom of his heart. Especially when he saw the girl in Lin Sun's arms, he was excited. Lin Lang is also here. Lin Lang is also here. Yes, and I will always be here," Lin Sun said in a gentle voice. He pulled Shiryu up from the ground and patted the mud on his body. "And you, it doesn't matter if your cultivation is abolished. I will help you rebuild your cultivation. I will also help you pay back the torture and pain you have suffered over the years." His voice was soft, with the power of Tao, which infiltrated Shiryu's mind and soothed his battered soul. Later, Shiryu's eyes were clear and his mind was completely restored. He hugged Lin Sun and grinned. "I only know that you're back. Even if I die, my daughter Lin Lang won't be helpless anymore." His words made Lin Sun's heart ache. He patted Shiryu's back and said, "Don't worry. You and Lin Lang will always be together." "It's ridiculous. If the big forces in the Forbidden City know that you are still alive, guess what the consequences will be?" In the distance, Qi Sangmei, who was imprisoned on the ground, sneered, "If you listen to my advice, let me go now. I can make a decision to let you go with Shiryu and his daughter. Otherwise, even if you kill me, you can't live anymore." Shiryu was furious at once and was about to say something. Lin Sun said, "Go wash first, put on clean clothes, and swallow the medicine in the bottle. This woman can't escape." His words were casual, but the meaning revealed in his words made Qi Sangmei's hands and feet cold, and her mind almost collapsed. Lin Sun ignored her at all. He handed some clothes and medicine to Shiryu and carefully told him, "Your cultivation is abolished and your body is suffering from chronic diseases. Soak this medicine in water. Don't swallow it all at once. When your body is recuperated, I will rebuild the Taoist root for you." Shiryu's heart was rolling with unspeakable warmth. His eyes couldn't help being wet again. P.S. Many children complain that the pace is slow. To be honest, the goldfish is very depressed. Forget it. I will add one more chapter tonight. Please remember the domain name of this book. Literature Museum. Chapter 2451. 15 minutes later. After washing, Shiryu put on new clothes. Although he was still thin and old, his eyes were bright and glowing with a new look. According to Lin Sun's instructions, he melted a medicinal pill and drank it one by one until he felt that his body was burning unbearably. He immediately stopped drinking and closed his eyes to meditate. Lin Sun stretched out a hand and pressed it on his shoulder, cleansing his bones and removing the chronic diseases in his body. The magical power of Tao, like gurgling water, quickly flowed all over Shiryu's body. Visible to the naked eye, his body was like a withered tree in spring. In just a quarter of an hour, it glowed with abundant vitality. Even his appearance had become much younger. Lin Sun took back his hand and said with a smile, "In this way, your pubic region can be reshaped and the Taoist root can be established in less than 3 days." Shiryu opened his eyes with hope in his eyes. Can I really set foot on the road of Tao again? For any practitioner, the abolishment of cultivation was simply a terminal illness. It was enough to make them collapse and burn all their thoughts. Not to mention a sage, even a quasi-emperor couldn't do anything about it. But for Lin Sun, who had the cultivation of the 4th level of Emperor Realm, reshaping Shiryu's cultivation was just a piece of cake. Sure, Lin Sun smiled. Cheat Songmei, who had been sitting in the distance, couldn't help being stunned when she heard Lin Sun's reply. Reshaping the Taoist path? It was like changing fate. Where did Lin Sun get the confidence to make such a solemn promise? Next, Lin Sun asked what had happened to Shiryu over the years. Shiryu didn't hide it and told them one by one. A few years ago, the orthodoxies of the ancient Desolation territory entered the Forbidden City and almost annexed all the aristocratic families. Keystone business was not spared. Shiryu's father, fortune god Shur, and his two brothers were all killed by the Holy Land of Spirit Treasure. The great foundation of Keystone business was also occupied by the Holy Land of Spirit Treasure. Although Shiryu was lucky enough to survive, his cultivation was completely crippled. The reason why he could survive was actually related to Lin Sun. The reason was that the Holy Land of Spirit Treasure knew that Shiryu and Lin Sun were good brothers who went through thick and thin together, so they planned to keep Shiryu as a hostage. Once Lin Sun appeared, they would use Shiryu to threaten Lin Sun. The Holy Land of Lingbao handed over this matter to Chief Family, which was under its command. All these years, Shiryu and his wife had been imprisoned here, but 6 years ago, his wife had died during childbirth, leaving only his infant daughter, Shi Linlang. In the past 6 years, in order to support Shi Linlang, Shiryu had a compromise. He tried his best to beg Qi Songmei in exchange for some materials to keep his daughter alive. Hearing this, Lin Sun's heart rolled again, and his black eyes were terrifyingly cold. Lin Sun, did you hear that? If it weren't for me, Shiryu's daughter would have starved to death. There's no way we can survive. In the distance, Qi Songmei shouted. Pa! A shapeless slap struck her face to the point blood sprayed from her mouth. Her hair was disheveled as she curled up on the ground while her entire body trembled, and she didn't dare speak another word. Shiryu said angrily, "If I didn't threaten you with my life, how could a vicious woman like you be so kind? As long as I'm alive, I'm valuable to you. You can threaten Lin Sun with me." He suddenly got up as if he couldn't wait to kill Qi Songmei now. Lin Sun stopped him and said calmly, "Isn't it too easy to kill her like this? When Qi Family is destroyed, let her witness it with her own eyes and experience the pain and torture." Shiryu took a deep breath and nodded in agreement. Qi Songmei obviously didn't believe it. Even though she was in a bad situation, she still sneered. In today's Forbidden City, once Lin Sun showed up, he was doomed to die. Soon, Lin Sun asked about the Lin family of heart-cleansing peak, but Shiryu also shook his head to show that he didn't know. This matter was like a big mystery. Not to mention the people of today, even the orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation territory who wanted to kill Lin Sun and his family had been looking for clues. This isn't too bad of a piece of news, Lin Sun sighed in his heart. Next, Lin Sun asked about Green Deer School, the commune of spiritual tattooists and Golden Hall. Shiryu said with certainty, "All these are deliberately done by the major forces in the ancient Desolation territory. The purpose is to eradicate the forces related to you and capture those close to you as hostages. It's okay if you don't show up all the time, but as long as you show up, they will use these hostages as a threat." Although Lin Sun had already guessed this, when he got Shiryu's answer, he still couldn't help but feel angry. "Fortunately, I didn't reveal my identity when I was in Yi family of Donghai. Otherwise, if the major forces in the ancient Desolation territory knew it, they would immediately transfer Shiryu and other hostages and firmly hold them as chess pieces," Lin Sun thought in his heart. The teachers and students of Green Deer School, Master Ubeidu and Master Chu of the commune of spiritual tattooists, and Gu Yinping and Gu Liang of Golden Hall are still alive. However, like me, they have already become prisoners. When Shiryu said this, he looked at Qi Songmei with anger in his eyes. All these are inseparable from Qi family, Hua family, and Qi family. They are willing to be dogs under different forces in the ancient Desolation territory. In order to please their masters, these dogs rack their brains to give advice for their masters. In the early years, almost all the forces related to your Lin family were wiped out. Like Qi family, Hua family and Qi family were among the 7 top aristocratic families of the empire long before the revival of spiritual Qi. Knowing all this, Lin Sun only felt that he was about to lose control of his anger. In the distance, Qi Tsangmei couldn't help but explain, we also want to survive. Those forces in the ancient desolation territory are so terrible. If we don't surrender, we are doomed to be exterminated. Those who follow will prosper, and those who go against will die. Bullshit, Shiryu scolded loudly. Even if you surrender, you can still protect yourselves. You should not be willing to be the minions of the Lin family to attack and retaliate against the forces related to Lin family. Qi Tsangmei sneered disdainfully and seemed to be too lazy to refute. This made Shiryu very angry. Until now, Qi Tsangmei still had the attitude of having someone to rely on. Obviously, she thought that it was impossible for Lin Sun to reverse the current situation of the Forbidden City by himself. Lin Sun waved his hand and motioned Shiryu to calm down. Then he asked, so, those hostages are now under the control of Hua family, Qi family, and Qi family? Shiryu nodded. It should be so. No matter what, they are implicated by me. I can't let them be threatened again. Lin Sun's eyes were deep and cold. Since entering the Forbidden City, he had seen and heard one after another, which made his mood surge uncontrollably again and again. Until now, the accumulated anger in his heart had been about to erupt. Knock, knock, knock. Someone suddenly knocked on the gate of the courtyard. Miss, it's time to leave. The voice of the black-robed old man who drove the chariot for Qi Tsangmei sounded outside the courtyard. Qi Tsangmei's eyebrows showed hope, and she screamed at the first time, go. Just 2 words seemed to consume all her strength. She gasped for a while, as if relieved. Then she looked at Lin Sun with a touch of complacency. Lin Sun, if you take Shiryu and his daughter away now, you still have a chance to leave the Forbidden City. Otherwise, the voice stopped abruptly. The gate of the courtyard opened, but there was a corpse lying silently outside the gate. In the blink of an eye, it turned into ashes and disappeared. Qi Tsangmei's heart seemed to be grasped fiercely. She was so scared that her whole body was stiff and her pretty face was pale, because it was the black-robed old man. Do you know what I did in the ancient desolation territory? Lin Sun asked. Qi Tsangmei was stunned and shook her head blankly. Lin Sun seemed to understand something and said to himself, no wonder you are so stupid. It turns out that you don't know anything. How could those orthodoxies in the ancient desolation territory, who had become enemies with him and had been constantly hit by him, tell such a humiliating thing to Qi Tsangmei? Qi Tsangmei, who had been living in the mortal world, was doomed to not know it. Not to mention in the ancient desolation territory, even on the ancient road of the starry sky, few people dared to offend Lin Sun. Vision would be limited to one's cognition. If the people in the mortal world still looked at Lin Sun in the same way as before, they were doomed to make a big mistake. Ahu, old toad, Alu, Lin Sun released Ahu and others from the Tower of Endless and briefly told them about Shiryu. Then he told them, you take care of Shiryu here. I'll be back soon. Ahu and others nodded. They all saw that Lin Sun's mood at the moment was not right. Maybe for him, what he needed was a catharsis. Only Shiryu was stunned. What are you going to do? Save people and then kill them. After saying this, Lin Sun disappeared from the courtyard with Qi Tsangmei, who was in a panic. Shiryu couldn't help being anxious. Why don't you stop him? The Forbidden City is different from that year. But he spoke until his mouth was almost dry, only to see Ahu Old Toad, Alu, and the others standing there motionless, strange expressions on their faces. What's the matter with you? Shiryu said angrily. Brother, do you know my elder brother's cultivation now? Old Toad couldn't help reminding him. Shiryu shook his head. He only knew that the Forbidden City was occupied by the orthodoxies in the ancient desolation territory. Once Lin Sun was discovered, the consequences were bound to be serious. My elder brother can kill emperors like killing chickens now, Alu said bluntly. He couldn't bear to see Shiryu so anxious. Kill emperors? Shiryu was stunned. Master can crush those idiots like ants with one hand, Little Silver said unhurriedly with his arms crossed over his chest. Sure, was stunned again. What was going on? These words were simply unimaginable to him, and they even overturned his understanding. Next, little Tion and the big blackbird said one after another, Master once killed on the starry sky ancient way and was called Emperor Daoyuan. He was the first legend to become an emperor in 100,000 years. It's his enemies who should be worried about his safety. Hey, Master Bird, just say it. In this mortal world, who can hurt Lin Sun? I'm willing to recognize him as my grandson. No, as my grandfather. Sure, he was completely petrified. P.S. There's a fourth update in the evening. Chapter 2452. The narrow alley was gloomy and dilapidated. When Lin Sun walked out with Chi Tsangmei, he didn't hide his breath. The sentries hiding in the dark found them almost at the first time. However, this was also the last scene they saw before they died. When Lin Sun walked out of the alley with Chi Tsangmei, there was no sound along the way. This made Chi Tsangmei's heart sink. She had a premonition that the sentries distributed nearby might have been in trouble. What frightened her was that she didn't notice how Lin Sun attacked from the beginning to the end. At this time, Chi Tsangmei suddenly realized the problem. After many years, what kind of cultivation did Lin Sun have when he returned to the mortal world? I need to get some news from your soul. You'd better not resist. Lin Sun suddenly said. When Chi Tsangmei was in a daze, her soul suddenly throbbed as if it was penetrated by countless cold tentacles. After a while, Lin Sun took back his spiritual awareness and had learned a lot of things in his mind. For example, the places where Qi family, Hua family, and Qi family were located, and the forces owned by these three families now. Are you really going to be the enemy of the whole world? Chi Tsangmei's face was pale with disbelief. The whole world? Lin Sun sneered. Those ancient desolation domain orthodoxies are nothing. Can they represent the whole mortal world? If she wasn't a prisoner now, Chi Tsangmei would definitely ridicule Lin Sun. It was crazy. Those orthodoxies of the ancient desolation domain had already stood at the top of the mortal world. Their power was enough to represent the strongest in the world. How could they not represent the whole world? Obviously, she didn't think that Lin Sun could compete with the orthodoxies of the ancient desolation domain. Lin Sun didn't bother to explain. Tao light swirled around his body, and the greenwood Taoist body and the scarlet fire Taoist body appeared. Go, go. As Lin Sun thought, greenwood Taoist body and red flame Taoist body immediately took action and flew in different directions. Before, Lin Sun had learned that those old friends who were caught by the enemy because of him were now imprisoned and guarded by Qi family, Hua family, and Qi family respectively. Since he was saving someone, he naturally had to deal a swift blow to the enemy in the shortest amount of time possible. Only then would he be able to avoid any mishaps. Therefore, Lin Sun sent Greenwood Taoist Physique and Red Fire Taoist Physique to the Qi family and the Hua family respectively. And he took Chi Tsangmei to Qi family. The Forbidden City was still prosperous, noisy, and lively. It was crowded with people and carriages everywhere. Lin Sun seemed to be strolling leisurely in the courtyard, but every step he took was like moving stars and shrinking the ground into an inch. In the vast sea of people, no one noticed his appearance. The reason was that his speed had already arrived at a shocking level. Most miraculous of it all was that when he teleported forward, there wasn't the slightest bit of energy that flowed out from his body, and he was like a soundless flowing light that was indistinct and unfathomable. In Chi Tsangmei's eyes, all the way was a distorted scene. Her vision and hearing could no longer perceive anything. Fortunately, all of this happened in less than a quarter of an hour. When the vision was finally clear, Chi Tsangmei breathed a long sigh of relief. But when she saw the scene in the distance, she was struck by lightning. Zhongsue Peak. This was the place where Qi family had been living for generations. It was unimaginable for Chi Tsangmei to cross such a long distance in less than a quarter of an hour. Even if a quasi-emperor tried his best to teleport from the street to Zhongsue Peak, it would take at least 3/4 of an hour. After today, this place will no longer exist. Lin Sun put his hands behind his back and said calmly, "Do you really want to be the enemy of Qi family?" Chi Tsangmei still couldn't believe it. No, your Qi family is not qualified to be my enemy. With that, Lin Sun moved forward. Stand here and watch carefully. Qi Songmei's strength was imprisoned, and she couldn't move at all. She was stunned. All this was about to subvert her cognition. This was the Forbidden City. It had been 50 years since the revival of spiritual Qi. It was no longer the same as before. How could Lin Sun dare to come to Qi family alone for revenge? The most incredible thing was that, at this moment, Lin Sun didn't hide his breath or hide. He just walked to Zhongsue Peak in an upright manner. You're courting death. Qi Songmei's eyes flashed with madness. Hey, isn't that the eldest daughter of Qi family? In the distance, many practitioners noticed Qi Songmei and Lin Sun. This was Zhongsue Peak, the place where Qi family, a superior aristocratic family, occupied. Since Qi family submitted to the Holy Land of Lingbao, its power was more powerful than before. In the Forbidden City, it was also a local force with great power. Qi Songmei was the daughter of the head of Qi family. Who didn't know her? Who is that young man? Why does his back seem to be familiar? An elder frowned, and his pupils shrank suddenly. He said in horror, "Is it him?" "Who?" All the people nearby were curious. Lin Sun, the head of heart-cleansing Peak. The old man's eyes were complicated and full of surprise. Many years ago, when I was a young man, I had the honor to see the face of the head of heart-cleansing Peak. However, he has disappeared for a long time. Lin Sun? Some young people were also stunned. After a while, they couldn't help laughing. It turned out to be the guy who was known as a champion in the capital a long time ago. It's a pity that with the recovery of spiritual Qi, even if such a character really appears, it's difficult for him to gain a foothold in the capital. Someone laughed disapprovingly. Lin Sun was a thing of the past, not worth mentioning. Heart-cleansing Peak has been destroyed. If the young man is Lin Sun, why doesn't he dare to revenge? Someone sneered. Revenge? I'm afraid that once he shows his trace, he will be killed. Who doesn't know that Green Deer School, commune of spiritual tattooists, Golden Hall, and other great forces were destroyed because of Lin Sun? Those great forces in the ancient Desolation territory want to kill him the most. While they were talking, suddenly they heard a bang. When they looked up, they saw a bloody and terrible scene. At the foot of Zhongsue Peak, an overmatch of Qi family, who guarded the gate, exploded like a ball with blood splashing. In broad daylight, how dare he run to the gate of Qi family and kill people? The practitioners in the distance were all stunned. He didn't care about his life at all. At this time, in front of the gate of Zhongsue Peak, those disciples of Qi family who guarded the gate also changed their faces and widened their eyes. This was the Forbidden City, the territory of Qi family. Which practitioner was tired of living would do such a crazy thing? How dare you commit murder in front of Qi family? You're courting death. A strong man of Qi family rushed out like a violent thunder and lightning. He jumped up in the air and slapped Lin Sun with one hand. Boom! 5 cyan lights, like sharp blades, shot out from the man's fingertips, making a sound of breaking the air. The cyan light was 3 feet long. It tore the void and was fierce and domineering. It's Qi Yunpeng, the 3rd deacon of Qi family. His cultivation has reached the 8th hurdle of longevity tribulation, only half a step away from the 9th hurdle. He has mastered the great cyan dipper print of Qi family. Even the opponents in the same realm dare not take it head-on. The young man is in trouble. An old man said as if he was familiar with it. The surrounding crowd was stunned. Qi Yunpeng was a famous master in longevity tribulation realm. Now, those who could become the deacons of Qi family were all overmatches in longevity tribulation realm. Just when everyone was about to shake their heads and feel sorry for Lin Sun. See, the fierce palm print dissipated silently in the void before it got close to Lin Sun. Qi Yunpeng, who was stunned, seemed to be suppressed by thousands of mountains. Bang! His body exploded in the air, and his blood splashed and dyed the vicinity of the gate red. What? Everyone in the distance was shocked and stunned. The dignified outer core executive of Qi family died suddenly in such a strange way. From the beginning to the end, no one saw how the young man did it. What kind of cultivation did he have to do it? True sage realm? Or great sage or sage king? It's impossible. Today's sage realm figures are the core forces of all major forces. And the quasi-emperor is the divine dragon in the sky. Why have I never heard of him? When did such a powerful figure appear in the Forbidden City? Those practitioners were shocked and doubtful. At this time, the faces of those overmatches of Qi family guarding in front of the gate had changed wildly. Let's go together. As they said, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Figures came from all directions. More than a dozen people attacked at the same time. Their momentum was overwhelming. This scene made the practitioners in the distance tremble with fear. This was the foundation of the overlord of Qi family. But Lin Sun didn't seem to feel it. He didn't even bother to lift a finger and still moved forward. A series of screams came in an instant. More than a dozen figures were like fireworks and firecrackers. They exploded in the air one after another, blooming scarlet and hot blood flowers, which were glaring and horrifying. The whole place was dead silent. In an instant, more than a dozen overmatches with the highest cultivation in the 9th hurdle of longevity tribulation and the lowest cultivation in reincarnation development realm all died on the spot. The practitioners in the distance were stunned and their hands and feet were cold. What kind of terrifying cultivation did he have to be able to do this? What was most incredible was that Qi Songmei just stood there from beginning to end, motionless and never stopped them. All of this was full of weirdness and abnormality. At this time, Lin Sun had walked into the gate of Zhongsue Peak. As the place where Qi family settled, the foot of Zhongsue Peak was covered with extremely strict prohibition power. In these years, Qi family even spent a lot of money to set up a holy Tao forbidden formation that could kill the overmatch of Saint King realm. But at this time, such a big formation seemed to exist in vain. Lin Sun walked into it casually without any movement. When seeing this scene, Qi Songmei's inner reliance and confidence seemed to be completely broken, and her eyes suddenly became dim. Thinking of what happened from the moment she saw Lin Sun to the present, there was only one thought in her mind. After many years, Lin Sun was very likely to have the cultivation of quasi-emperor. In today's world, quasi-emperor was like a dominator. He was absolutely qualified to make waves in the Forbidden City. Today's 4th chapter was delivered. After 12 o'clock in the morning, tomorrow's 2nd chapter would be updated. Chapter 2453. Quasi-Emperor. For Qi Songmei, who only had the cultivation of Great Sage Realm, it was already the supreme existence that she could imagine. Based on this judgment, she completely realized that the situation was not good, because there was only one quasi-emperor in the whole Qi family at present. In other words, even if Qi family could eventually survive, it would suffer heavy losses. Qi Songmei wanted to send a message to the nearby practitioners and let them send a message to the Holy Land of Spiritual Treasure. If the Holy Land of Spiritual Treasure knew that Lin Sun appeared, it would come here as soon as possible. In this way, the danger suffered by Qi family would be minimized. But Qi Songmei was shocked to find that she couldn't make any sound at all. She couldn't even spread out her spiritual awareness. All of a sudden, she was completely disappointed. At this time, on the top of Zhongsue Peak, in the main hall of Qi family, many high-level members of the Qi family gathered together to receive a distinguished guest. In recent years, as a superior force, Qi family had also seized a lot of opportunities and benefits. The overall power of Qi family had risen with the tide. It was no longer the same as before. Like the high-level figures of Qi family sitting in the main hall at this time, each of them had a profound aura. Some were as hot as fire, some were cold, some were full of fighting intent, and some were full of vigor. The weakest one had the cultivation of Great Sage Realm. But the most eye-catching one was a dignified, middle-aged man sitting in the seat of honor. He was dressed in a bright yellow robe. His hair was as black as ink, and his eyes were as cold as lightning. Qi Lingxiao. He was the master of Qi family. His aura was as deep as the abyss. It was full of the monstrous power of Quasi-Emperor. 20 years ago, Qi Lingxiao got a great opportunity from a folded secret realm. His cultivation transformed, and he became Quasi-Emperor. He also became the only existence of Quasi-Emperor in Qi family. But at this time, Qi Lingxiao was talking with a handsome young man in a Taoist robe with jade-like skin with a smiling face. This young man looked young, but his eyes were full of vicissitudes. His every move was full of unique reservation and pride. When he looked at Qi Lingxiao and other high-level figures of Qi family, he seemed to be looking down at the servants. Lan Muli, an inherited disciple of the Holy Land of spiritual treasure. Although he only had the cultivation of great sage realm, Qi Lingxiao and other big shots had to bow their heads with his identity. Master Qi, 2 hours ago, there was a shocking murderous intent rushing out of the heart-cleansing peak of Lin family. I wonder if you have noticed it? Lan Muli said calmly. So, young Master Lan is here for this matter. Qi Lingxiao nodded and said, I just learned about it. It is said that the murderous intent was so heavy that it rushed into the sky and disturbed the whole forbidden city. This is not something that ordinary people can do. At least, he must be a quasi-emperor. Lan Muli said indifferently. Our holy land of spirit treasure thinks so too, but unfortunately, when we sent people to investigate, there was no trace of him in the ruins of Heart-Cleansing Peak. But we suspect that person might be Lin's son. Lin's son? Qi Lingxiao and others were all stunned and shocked. For the young people in today's world, they might not know how dazzling Lin's son was in those days. But for the old guys, how could they not know what Lin's son represented? The power of one person could suppress a country. At that time, Zhou family and Qin Liang family, which were also one of the 7 top aristocratic families, were destroyed by this person overnight. Now, even if the world was completely different after the passage of time, how could Qi Lingxiao and others calm down when they thought of Lin's son? Of course, they were not afraid of Lin's son at all now. Apart from the fact that their own forces had been growing stronger over the years, it was also because they had the backing of the numinous treasure Holy Land. If it's really him, doesn't it mean that he has the cultivation of Quasi-Emperor? Qi Lingxiao's eyes twinkled. Lan Muli said, whether it's him or not, I'm here to take some people away by the order of my master. Qi Lingxiao hurriedly said, it's our honor to work for Holy Land of Spirit Treasure. May I know who you want to take away? Lan Muli said, those are related to Lin's son imprisoned by your Qi family. Go quickly. Time is pressing. I don't want to waste any more time. Qi Lingxiao nodded in agreement, but he felt a little strange in his heart. He couldn't help saying, child, even if that person is really Lin's son, it's only a matter of time to kill him with the foundation and power of Holy Land of Spirit Treasure. Lan Muli sneered, you don't understand. This person is not as simple as you think. When he was in the ancient desolation realm. Speaking of this, he suddenly stopped because if he continued, he would expose some things that made Holy Land of Spirit Treasure feel ashamed and embarrassed to this day. After a pause, he said calmly, in the context of the recovery of spiritual Qi, Lin's son is naturally nothing. After entering the Forbidden City, our Holy Land of Spirit Treasure has been looking forward to killing this guy for a long time. Unfortunately, this person has disappeared for many years. Bang! The closed door of the hall was knocked open. A figure staggered in and shouted in a trembling voice, Patriarch, it's not good. Someone broke into our Zhongsue Peak. What? All the people present were stunned and almost couldn't believe their ears. Only Qi Lingxiao was calm. He frowned and waved his hand. 3rd elder, 4th elder, 5th elder, you have a look together. Don't let the thief disturb here. Yes. Immediately, 3 big shots got up and left in a hurry. I'm sorry to make you laugh at me. Seeing this, Qi Lingxiao apologized to Lan Muli with a smile. Lan Muli couldn't help but be surprised. He clapped his hands and praised. Patriarch Qi remains calm in the face of danger. This kind of cultivation is really amazing. Qi Lingxiao laughed. Qi family has been entrenched in the Forbidden City for generations. I don't know how many storms and waves we have experienced. This little movement is not worth mentioning at all. Lon Muley nodded and was also relieved. This was the territory of Chi family. In today's Forbidden City, only idiots who didn't care about their lives dared to run wild here. But when Chi Ling Xiao and Lon Muley were about to talk, outside the hall, a shrill scream came from the foot of Zhongzhuek mountain far away and echoed in the hall. Chi Ling Xiao's face suddenly became gloomy and sullen. Seeing this, Lon Muley said, "How about Patriarch Qi go to see the situation first?" Chi Ling Xiao forced a smile and said, "Don't worry, it's just a little thing." As he said, he issued another order to send several high-level leaders of Qi family. "I'm curious, who in the Forbidden City dares to run wild in your Qi family? Don't they know that the holy land of spirit treasure will not sit idly by?" Lon Muley was thoughtful. Chi Ling Xiao smiled and said, "I'll let you have a look after I catch the thief." He'd just spoken up to hear when another shrill and miserable cry resounded, and it shook the hall to the point it droned. Chi Ling Xiao's old face was gloomy. Although he was shocked and angry, he also realized that the enemy who came to invade this time was not a trivial matter. "Let's go and have a look together." Lon Muley got up immediately. He couldn't sit still. Chi Ling Xiao and other big shots of Qi family also stood up quickly. At this time, boom, a loud noise came. The closed door of the hall burst into powder and scattered. Then a group of corpses of Qi family flew into the hall and rolled on the ground. Blood flowed. Chi Ling Xiao and others were all stiff. They were shocked by this sudden scene. When they saw the corpses on the ground clearly, unprecedented anger surged into the hearts of Chi Ling Xiao and others. Because those corpses were the high-level leaders of Qi family who had just left the hall. But now they were all killed. Who dared to kill all the way to the main hall of Qi family? At this time, an indifferent voice came from the gate. "Chi Ling Xiao, why don't you come out to meet your old friend? Could it be that you've forgotten who was the one who groveled and went to my Lin family to beg for mercy?" In the smoke and dust, a young man came with his hands on his back. At the moment of seeing the young man, Chi Ling Xiao and others' pupils shrank, and they cried out involuntarily, "It's you? How could it be?" Even Lon Muley's face suddenly changed at this moment, and his pupils shrank. The person was Lin Sun. His black eyes were indifferent. He glanced at the people in the hall and said, "Why? You didn't expect that I would come to visit you suddenly?" After the initial shock, Chi Ling Xiao had calmed down. His eyes were full of cold hatred. "Lin Sun, our Qi family has never offended you over the years. Why you kill into our Qi family today?" He was looking at Lin Sun, trying to see through his cultivation, but he was disappointed in the end. Lin Sun's breath was completely restrained, so he couldn't see through his cultivation at all. "Now you still have the face to ask me." Lin Sun's eyes became cold, and his tone was indifferent. "Do you really think I don't know how your Qi family, Hua family, and Qi family have been the dogs of those bastards in the ancient Desolation territory all these years?" Chi Ling Xiao and others were all stunned. This sentence not only scolded them, but also those orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation territory. Lon Muley, who had never spoken, suddenly said, "The killing intent that appeared in the ruins of Heart-Cleansing Peak was caused by you?" Lin Sun glanced at him. "The successor of Holy Land of Spirit Treasure?" Lon Muley's lips raised a touch of arrogance. "Yes." "Kneel down," Lin Sun said softly. "What?" Chi Ling Xiao and others almost couldn't believe their ears. This was the successor of Holy Land of Spirit Treasure. Was Lin Sun going to fight with Holy Land of Spirit Treasure? Bang! Lon Muley knelt down directly. His knees hit the ground, and his head was pressed to the ground. His handsome cheeks were red and ferocious. He felt greatly humiliated and roared, "Lin Sun, you're digging your own grave. Just you wait, the Forbidden City will be your burial place." Bang! The next moment, Lon Muley's body exploded. His flesh and blood splashed everywhere. Chi Ling Xiao and others were shocked to avoid being splashed by the blood. However, their faces became extremely livid and their eyes were wide open. Lin Sun killed the successor of Holy Land of Spirit Treasure so casually. It seemed that they still couldn't believe it. Originally, I planned to keep him alive and inquire about some news related to Holy Land of Spirit Treasure. Unfortunately, his mouth is too bad. Lin Sun looked at Qi Ling Xiao and others. His expression was as indifferent as before, and there was no trace of emotion in his voice. Next, it's your turn. Chapter 2454. As soon as he finished his words, Qi Ling Xiao and other big shots attacked with all their strength at the first time. All of them exerted their full strength. In that instant, the entire temple exploded into pieces, collapsing to the ground. In the face of such a pincer attack, Lin Sun waved his sleeves lightly. Boom! The sky was full of Taoist light. The 9 senior leaders of Qi family, including Qi Ling Xiao, were turned into ashes. Lin Sun turned around and walked down the mountain without looking at them. For him, the quasi-emperor realm was unbearable a long time ago. Even if his cultivation was suppressed to the first level of emperor realm, it was no different from killing a group of ants to kill Qi Ling Xiao and others. Looking up from the foot of Zhongshui Peak, one could see a scarlet and bloody road extending straight to the top of the mountain. That bloody road was the place where Lin Sun had walked. Wherever he passed, death and blood were left on the ground. This scene was clearly seen by Qi Tsongmei. When she saw the main hall of Qi family on the top of the mountain burst and collapsed, the last hope in her heart was also shattered. Her eyes were gloomy and she lost her soul. On the other hand, the number of spectators in the distance grew in number, and they'd witnessed this scene as well. Up until this moment, all of them were astounded. After the major forces of the wilderness made an agreement to prohibit fighting in the Forbidden City, almost no one dared to touch this iron law in these years. Such a bloody thing was almost impossible to see. But now, as a superior aristocratic family, Zhongshui Peak of Qi family encountered a great disaster. Who dared to ignore the rules of the Forbidden City and kill Qi family? Then, Lin Sun's tall figure walked out of the gate of Zhongshui Mountain and appeared in everyone's sight. The whole audience was silent. Only from the appearance, no one could associate this neatly dressed and indifferent young man with a matter of killing Qi family. There were also some seniors who seemed to recognize something and trembled all over. Did you see it clearly? At this time, Lin Sun had come to Qi Tsongmei and stopped. Qi Tsongmei, who seemed to be out of her body, screamed as if she was greatly stimulated. You killed all the people of Qi family? Lin Sun nodded. Qi Tsongmei's figure was shaky, as if she was crazy. She hissed, but most of those clansmen are innocent. You are practically a demon. Lin Sun said calmly. It's you who make me understand that if I don't remove the roots, there will be endless trouble in the future. How innocent was Shiryu? Just because they had a close relationship, he had suffered so much torture and humiliation. The Green Deer School, the commune of spiritual tattooists, and the Golden Hall were all destroyed just because they were related to the Lin family. Even the clansmen of Heart-Cleansing Peak were still in danger. This series of cruel realities made Lin thoroughly understand that he was too soft-hearted before. When dealing with enemies, one should completely annihilate them to prevent future troubles. It didn't matter if he was called a demon or a butcher. As long as his friends and family didn't have to suffer such danger in the future, it was enough. Cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Qi Tsongmei completely collapsed. She squatted on the ground and cried silently. All of a sudden, she seemed to have aged countless years, and her cultivation silently dissipated. Lin Sun could see that her Taoist heart had collapsed, and her cultivation was no different from being abolished. Is it cruel? This is the price you and your Qi family should pay. After that, Lin Sun left. Without cultivation, Qi Tsongmei was doomed to die. In this regard, Lin Sun would not have any sympathy. Until Lin Sun disappeared. There was a sudden exclamation in the field. It's him. It must be him. After so many years, the man who was crowned all over the capital is back. The temperament of the master of Heart-Cleansing Peak has always been clear about kindness and hatred and decisive in killing. Now that he is back, the Forbidden City is destined to be turbulent. There was a sensation in the field. The older generation were so excited that they were incoherent. The memories of their youth were evoked one by one, which made their blood surge. Some young people gradually guessed the identity of Lin's son, and they were shocked. The legend, who had long been a thing of the past, actually destroyed the chief family today. Everyone realized that Lin's son's return was destined to set off a storm in the Forbidden City. When Lin's son killed the chief family in person, Qingdong Peak. It was the place where Hua family, a superior aristocratic family, occupied. Greenwood Taoist physique had also started to kill. On the winding and spacious mountain road, he was dressed in a green robe with his hands behind his back. He walked straight and looked ordinary. But in the eyes of the Hua family, he was like an ancient god who took a step and landed on the ground. The earth shook, the rocks were powdered, and the grass and trees were turned into ashes. Kill! Strong people rushed to him like a tide. The treasure light was flowing and dazzling. A science or chi shot out from Lin's son's fingertips. In an instant, like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds, it killed all the strong men on the spot. It was just like harvesting a piece of grass. But this was just the beginning. 3 seconds later, Lin's son waved his hand like swatting flies, killing a group of Saint Realm cultivators and smashing them into meat pies. 5 seconds later, Lin's son pointed his finger and pierced through the forehead of a powerful quasi-emperor. Every time Lin's son took a step forward, all the opponents he saw along the way fell down one by one. No one could resist Lin's son. Behind him, the blood all over the ground gathered into a river and flowed along the mountain road. The thick blood turned into mist and continued to evaporate. Panicked screams and angry roars reverberated in the sky above the Hua family. At the top of the mountain, Hua Luhong, the head of the Hua family, and the other big shots all turned pale and felt cold all over. It had only been a moment since Lin's son appeared, but he had already killed his way to the core hinterland of the Hua family. What restrictive power, what treasures and Taoist magic, all were useless. He seemed invincible, climbing all the way up the stairs, sweeping away all obstacles. And the killing along the way also made Hua Luhong and the other high-level people tremble with fear, their hearts bleeding. Those who died were all members of the Hua family. And at this time, Lin's son's figure was approaching the top of the mountain. Lin's son, can you give the Hua family a chance to atone and correct? The people you want to save have already been rescued by you. Why don't you let go? Do you really want to destroy the Hua family before you are satisfied? Hua Luhong shouted, forcing himself to calm down. This time, I can't forgive you, Lin's son said indifferently. Even if the backer you have been waiting for, Xuandu Taoist sect, comes, it can't change the ending of the Hua family. You, Hua Luhong's eyes almost popped out, his face livid, and the muscles on his face trembled. If so, we can only fight with our lives. Fight with our lives? It's futile. Lin's son casually slapped out his palm. Boom! The void trembled. With a bang, a giant green palm that looked like the hand of an ancient deity appeared in the sky. It was hundreds of meters wide, and with the momentum of a divine mountain, it slammed toward Hua Luhong fiercely. Be careful, patriarch! The big shots of the Hua family all changed their expressions at the same time and attacked together. All kinds of terrifying Taoist magic turned into palm prints, fist radiance, sword chi, and torrents, wrapped in all kinds of terrible visions, and smashed at the giant cyan palm. Hua Luhong's face also darkened, and an extremely strong black evil spirit emerged from his body, turning into a black cloud cover of more than 10 feet long, blocking the giant palm. Bang! 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 Many Taoist magic smashed on the giant palm, but the cyan palm did not move at all. Instead, they were shocked by the power and were forced to retreat. The weaker ones were even injured and spat out a mouthful of blood. The momentum of the giant cyan palm was not exhausted, and it still slapped down with great power. Hua Luhong and others were horrified. They desperately resisted and displayed their trump cards. But the power of Lin's son's palm was so great. Boom! There was a loud noise. Rays of light splashed and rose to the sky. When the smoke and dust dissipated, a huge pit with a depth of 300 feet could be seen on the top of the mountain. The palm print in the pit was clear, like the palm print of a god. As for Hua Luong and the other higher-ups, they had all been turned into dark red blood, dyeing the enormous palm print a dazzling red. One palm all destroyed. The palm print of 300 feet sunken in the top of the mountain would be clearly visible in the years to come, shocking countless people in the future. At the same time, Jiuwen Peak, the place where the Qi family resided. Lin Sun's scarlet-flamed Taoist body stood on the top of the mountain, covered in flames, burning the sky and evaporating the clouds. The Jiuwen Peak, which was thousands of feet high, had already turned into a raging sea of fire. All the clansmen of the Qi family were buried in the sea of fire. Whether it was the tragedy that happened to the Qi family of Zhongsue Peak, the Hua family of Qingdong Peak, and the Qi family of Jiuwen Peak. All of this happened almost at the same time and ended at the same time. It was only a moment. When Lin Sun met with the two Taoist bodies and returned to the street where Shiryu and others were, the news had just spread out. Lin Sun, the head of Heart-Cleansing Peak, returned to the Forbidden City. This news, along with the destruction of the Qi family, the Hua family, and the Qi family, swept the whole Forbidden City like a hurricane, setting off monstrous waves and making countless practitioners tremble. Lin Sun, who had been silent for many years, had already become the memory of the older generation in the lower world where the spiritual aura recovered. When those younger generation talked about Lin Sun, they were more disapproving or even disdainful. They thought that the era of Lin Sun had long passed, and he was not worthy of admiration. But today, Lin Sun's strong return was like a thunder in the ninth heaven, which shocked both the older generation and the younger generation. It should be known that the three top aristocratic families, the Hua family, the Qi family, and the Qi family, have been soaring in recent years since they surrendered to those forces in the ancient Desolation Territory. They were second only to those forces in the ancient Desolation Territory. But such three forces were destroyed by Lin Sun at the same time. This was undoubtedly terrible. How strong is Lin Sun now? After being silent for many years, he is more elegant than before. Heart-Cleansing Peak was destroyed, and all the forces related to the Lin family suffered one by one. How angry will the head of Heart-Cleansing Peak be after knowing these things? Countless uproars and discussion sounded. The Forbidden City, which had already become a world, was completely in a sensation because of Lin Sun's return on this day. P.S. It's hard to be scolded these days. No need to encourage me. Just don't scold me, okay? Please remember the domain name of this book. Library of Literature. Chapter 2455. In the street. When he saw Lin Sun return safely, Shiryu breathed a sigh of relief. But then he was stunned. It seemed that less than an hour had passed. How could Lin Sun come back so soon? Then, Shiryu saw a group of figures appearing in the courtyard as Lin Sun's sleeves fluttered. There were some teachers and students of Green Deer School, spiritual tattooists, such as Yu Beidu and Chu Feng of the Commune of Spiritual Tattooists, and Gu Yinping and Gu Liang of Golden Hall. Before long, the whole courtyard was filled with people. Shiryu opened his mouth wide and was stunned. He suddenly remembered what Old Toad and Alu had said before. They said that Lin Sun killed the emperor as easily as killing a chicken, and that he was the most powerful emperor in 100,000 years. It didn't seem to be false. Gu Yinping and his son, Green Deer School, Commune of Spiritual Tattooists, and other people who were rescued by Lin Sun were also very excited at the moment. Being prisoners for years, they had long been desperate and thought that they would die. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun was like a god descending to the world today, rescuing them from captivity at lightning speed. Until now, they still felt unreal, as if they were in a dream. Lin Sun, is it really you? Gu Yinping was excited. When Lin Sun first entered Xiao Empire, he was only a teenager of 13 or 14 years old. At that time, Gu Yinping and Lin Sun got to know each other. Now, more than 100 years had passed in a hurry. The young man at that time had already become a famous figure in the world. This time, he had even killed his way into the three upper-class clans and saved them from the brink of disaster. Others also looked at Lin's son. After many years, Lin's son was still the same as before. He was indifferent, elegant, and refined. Standing there casually, he was like the backbone supporting the sky, giving people a sense of steadiness. Lin's son was also very excited. Among these figures, there were many familiar faces such as Gu Yanping, Gu Liang, the teachers of Green Deer School, Yu Beidu, Chu Feng. However, they were all in rags, with disheveled hair, haggard appearance, and weak breath. They looked very miserable. No one knew exactly how much torture and suffering they had suffered over the years. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun bowed and apologized. "What happened to you is all because of me and the Lin family behind me. I'm sorry for making you suffer over the years." Everyone was moved, and Ahu, Old Toad, and the others were even more taken aback. It was the first time for them to see Lin Sun apologizing so guiltily in these years. Gu Yanping and others were also caught off guard. When they were about to say something, Lin Sun raised his body and said seriously, "Don't worry, everyone. I'll put an end to it this time." The surroundings were deathly silent, and then many people's eyes were brimming with tears, while some even started to cry soundlessly. All these years, they had indeed suffered torment and devastation. They were in a state where they could neither live nor die. Knowing that Lin Sun would avenge them, how could they not be excited? Lin Sun's heart was also in turmoil. It was also on this day that he arranged for Old Toad and the others to take good care of his old friends. He walked out of the alley alone and walked on the bustling street. Unconsciously, he came to the ruins of Heart-Cleansing Peak. Those Lin family clansmen, where did they go? With his hands behind his back, Lin Sun was in a trance. At the same time, the Forbidden City had fallen into a great sensation. After disappearing silently for many years, Lin Sun destroyed Qi, Hua, and Qi as soon as he came back. The three top aristocratic forces. His bloody and overbearing methods caused countless cultivators to tremble with fear. But at the same time, many elders who had lived in the Forbidden City for generations were ecstatic. For them, the Forbidden City belonged to the inferior world after all. Over the years, it had been occupied by the great orthodoxies of the ancient Desolation territory, and many folded secret realms and blessed places had been taken away. The revival of spiritual Qi was originally a great opportunity for all living beings in the inferior world to change their fate. But over the years, such an opportunity had been occupied by those outsiders. The most hateful thing was that those great forces in the ancient Desolation territory were extremely domineering and cruel. They occupied and annexed all the great forces in the inferior world. If they dared to disobey, they would be destroyed. Now, Lin Sun's return let these elders in the inferior world see hope. They couldn't help but expect that the master of Heart-Cleansing Peak, who once suppressed a country by himself, could turn the situation around and rewrite the situation dominated by those forces in the ancient Desolation territory. But soon, someone stood up and said, what Lin Sun did today was too reckless. Behind the Qi family, the Hua family, and the Qi family stood the great orthodoxies of the ancient Desolation territory. It's nice for him to destroy the three great families, but it will inevitably arouse the great forces in the ancient Desolation territory to attack him. Don't forget that those great forces in the ancient Desolation territory had been killing the forces related to Lin Sun as soon as they entered the Forbidden City. This time, he showed up like this. Isn't it the same as throwing himself into the trap? Lin Sun is in danger. As soon as this remark came out, the boiling atmosphere of the whole Forbidden City changed. Yes, there were the orthodoxies of the ancient Desolation territory after all, and there were more than one. For the people in the inferior world, those orthodoxies from the ancient Desolation territory were like the dominators in the sky. They could only be in awe and look up to them. But they had to be in awe. When these great forces appeared, there were people who challenged them. There had been strong practitioners of the Saint Realm, and even all the forces of a great force to attack them. But those forces in the ancient Desolation territory only sent a few people to destroy all the challengers. They also uprooted many great forces in the inferior world, causing millions of deaths. It should be known that this was the background of the revival of spirit chi. Many dazzling and tyrannical figures had also emerged from the lower realms. But the orthodoxies of the ancient desolation territory still showed a completely crushing power. How could the people in the inferior world not be shocked and afraid? Since then, no one dared to challenge the holy lands of the ancient desolation territory. Even a disciple of the Holy Land could go anywhere, just like a king patrolling the world. It could be said that the status of these great forces in the ancient desolation territory was higher and more transcendent than that of the imperial royal family and the Lin family of heart-cleansing peak. So now, many strong practitioners of the younger generation believe that the situation of the ancient desolation territory ruling the inferior world was doomed to be unchangeable. Alas, so it's hard for peak leader Lin to change anything this time. Many people sighed. That's not necessarily true. Many years ago, Lin's son destroyed the Zhou family and the Qin family and wiped out all the demon beasts in the entire territory of the empire. Now he has come back and destroyed the three top aristocratic families of the Hua family, the Qi family, and the Qi family. If there is no accident, Lin's son must be in the realm of quasi-emperor now. Someone said with certainty, in today's world, a quasi-emperor was already like a dominator of the world. Oh, a quasi-emperor? Even if he is a quasi-emperor, he has already missed the great opportunity of the recovery of spiritual qi when he left the inferior world. How high can his cultivation be? Yes, some people sneered. Most people agreed with this view. Not long after Lin's son left, the inferior world ushered in the great era of the recovery of spiritual qi and missed the great opportunity. Now he came back. Even if he was a quasi-emperor, he was only one person. And in the orthodoxies of the ancient desolation territory, there were countless people in the realm of quasi-emperor. It's a pity that if peak leader Lin stayed in the inferior world, he could have become the top talent of the era. Not to mention being a quasi-emperor, it is very possible for him to reach the realm of emperor. But now, many people sighed and felt sorry for Lin's son. It is said that in the heaven-reaching sword sect, there is a supreme elder who stepped into the realm of emperor when he was cultivating in a folded secret realm. When this news came out, all the people in the Forbidden City felt as if they were struck by lightning. All of them were shocked and completely chilled. The realm of emperor? A quasi-emperor was already a terrifying existence that no one dared to imagine. Not to mention the realm of emperor, which was above the quasi-emperor. If this is true, peak leader Lin, I'm afraid countless people sighed secretly. And for those orthodoxies of the ancient desolation territory, Lin's son's return also caused great waves. Amethyst Mountain. A few decades ago, there was a blessed place in the Forbidden City, but now it was occupied by the Black Sea Tengu tribe. On the top of Amethyst Mountain, in a magnificent hall, dozens of big shots of the Black Sea Tengu tribe in black robes with scarlet eyes were drinking and chatting. Each of these big shots had an extremely fierce aura, and there was no lack of quasi-emperors. Many beautiful maids with voluptuous bodies and curvaceous curves were fearfully waiting on the side. They were all slaves who had been captured. Some big shots of the Black Sea Tengu tribe were hungry and directly grabbed the maids, bit their throats, and gnawed on their flesh and blood. Demon Lin? It was this damn bastard who killed so many strong people of our tribe. We haven't taken revenge for this until now. I never thought that he would take the initiative to appear. An old man who was as skinny as a stick spoke slowly in the seat of honor. Yes, just today, this boy destroyed 3 forces in the city. It is speculated that this boy's cultivation has also made great progress in these years. He should already be in the realm of quasi-emperor. Quasi-emperor? If so, now is the time to kill this boy. We will not forget the hatred of those years. That's right. These big shots of the Black Sea Tengu tribe made a decision after a short discussion. And at this time, not only in the Black Sea Tengu tribe, heaven-reaching sword sect, Holy Land of Spiritual Treasure, Xuandu Taoism sect, Beast Spiritual Mountain, and other major forces of the ancient desolation were all discussing matters related to Lin's son. This boy has finally appeared. I would like to see how much progress the top great saint of the 9 regions has made after so many years. An elder of the heaven-reaching sword sect said indifferently. Demon Lin, oh, Demon Lin, how dare you come back? Do you know that you have missed a whole 50 years under the recovery of spiritual qi? Come, announce to the outside world that the Xuandu Taoism sect challenges Lin Sun. I want countless people in the Forbidden City to see how this little bastard dies. Go, tell everyone in the Forbidden City that whoever dares to protect Lin Sun will be exterminated. Go and contact other orthodoxies to seal the Forbidden City together. This time, we will catch a turtle in a jar and kill him to avenge the blood feud of that year. All kinds of orders were transmitted from different forces in the ancient Desolation realm, igniting the already turbulent atmosphere in the Forbidden City. Chapter 2456. At this moment, Lin Sun had returned to the courtyard. Where's Old Toad? He suddenly noticed that Old Toad wasn't there. He went to inquire about the news. He said that he couldn't let you work alone. Lu said hurriedly. Lin Sun nodded. Looking at the people gathered in the courtyard, an idea came to his mind. He would leave the mortal world sooner or later. Without him, what if his relatives and friends were in danger again in the future? Lin Sun had never thought about this problem before. After experiencing this lesson, he deeply realized that this problem had reached the point where it needed to be solved urgently. And there might be only one way to solve all this: to establish an orthodoxy that could be passed down for generations. I'll start to prepare for it after I solve the enemies and find the clansmen of Lin family. Lin Sun made a decision secretly. Before long, Old Toad came back with all kinds of news in the Forbidden City. Until now, sure you and those who were saved by Lin Sun finally dare to believe that Lin Sun really destroyed the 3 top aristocratic families of Qi, Hua, and Qi all by himself. And this matter had already caused an uproar in the Forbidden City. But when Old Toad reported the reactions of the orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation domain, except for Hu and Lu, sure you and others all changed their expressions. Big brother, those old bastards have said that they will block the Forbidden City and kill you. Whoever dares to protect you will be exterminated. That's going too far. Sure you was angry. Those from Green Deer School, the commune of spiritual tattooists, and Golden Hall also changed their expressions. Those orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation domain were against Lin Sun together. This made their hearts extremely heavy. But Lin Sun's black eyes flashed coldly, and he said, Do these bastards think that I didn't kill enough people in the ancient Desolation domain? They're just a bunch of useless people. How dare they yell at me like this? Then I'll destroy them. Over these years, he had killed countless emperors on the ancient road of the starry sky. Even the Hidden Land realm and the Divine Sunshine ancient sect were destroyed by him. How could he put those in the ancient Desolation domain in his eyes? Sure you and others were all stunned. It was obvious that Lin Sun didn't take those orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation domain seriously. What surprised them even more was that Ahu, Old Toad, Lu, and the others all nodded at Lin Sun's words. Even Little Silver and Little Tion were seething with murderous intent and eager to make a move. If the practitioners in the Forbidden City saw this, they would think that Lin and the others were crazy. Looking at the whole mortal world, who dared to look down on the orthodoxy of the ancient Desolation realm. Old Toad, Lu, go to the city to convey the message. 3 days later, I will wait for them at the place where Heart Cleansing Peak is located. If they don't come, I will visit them in person and kill them all. Lin Sun made up his mind and uttered each word resolutely. All right. Old Toad and Lu left excitedly. Sure you and others were stiff all over. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would make a decision so quickly. It was too late when they wanted to persuade him again. Uncle, can Lin Lang become as powerful as you in the future? Not far away, a pink little girl ran over, blinking her big watery eyes and looking at Lin Sun. Her voice was crisp and lovable. Lin Sun picked up the little girl with a smile and said, Little girl, why do you want to be so powerful? Sure, Lin Lang answered without hesitation. I want my father to never be bullied again. Bullied. Listening to her childish voice, Shiryu's eyes turned red. Lin Sun also sighed with emotion in his heart. Rubbing Shi Linlong's little head, Lin Sun said softly, I promise you that I will make you very powerful in the future. For countless practitioners in the Forbidden City, this day was destined to be recorded in history. Shortly after Lin Sun returned with the corpses of the three top aristocratic families, the orthodoxy of the ancient Desolation Realm issued an order to block the whole city, aiming at Lin Sun alone. This shocked many people and made them burst into an uproar. It's a pity that if Lin Sun chose to stay dormant for a period of time after his return, he might have a chance to wrestle with the ancient Desolation Realm when he was fully confident. But now, I'm afraid he will be in danger. Many people were pessimistic and felt sorry for Lin Sun. Even those who hated Lin Sun couldn't deny that Lin Sun was indeed the most talented person in the mortal world, whether it was in the past or now. It was a pity that Lin Sun didn't know how to keep a low profile. As soon as he appeared, he set off a bloody storm, so that he provoked the hostility of the orthodoxy of the ancient Desolation Realm, which was tantamount to seeking his own death. Just when the world agreed that Lin Sun would usher in a catastrophe, an explosive news spread throughout the Forbidden City at an incredible speed. 3 days later, Lin Sun will challenge the orthodoxy of the ancient Desolation Realm in front of the ruins of Heart-Cleansing Peak. If the orthodoxy of the ancient Desolation Realm doesn't dare to accept the challenge, Lin Sun will go to them in person and kill them all. As soon as the news came out, all the practitioners in the Forbidden City were dumbfounded. Is this guy out of his mind? God, he actually wants to fight against all the orthodoxy of the ancient Desolation Realm alone. He also said that if they don't dare to accept the challenge, he will go to them in person and kill them all. Where does Lin Sun get the confidence to despise those dominating forces? Crazy, this guy is absolutely crazy. Countless people smacked their lips and felt ridiculous and unbelievable. But anyway, after the news came out, the whole Forbidden City's eyes were focused on the place where Heart-Cleansing Peak was located. 3 days later, did Lin Sun really dare to fight against the orthodoxy of the ancient Desolation Realm here, as the news said? Different from the crazy appearance of Lin Sun, who was trembling with fear and desperate, Lin Sun at this moment seemed extremely leisurely and calm. He was dressed in a moon-white robe, and his crystal black long hair was coiled up by a wooden hairpin at will. He exuded a simple and indifferent charm. In the courtyard, he was sitting on the ground, making tea, studying scriptures, and thinking about the way to break the realm. As for the orthodoxy of the ancient Desolation Realm, he didn't take them seriously at all. Although his cultivation was suppressed, it didn't mean that he couldn't understand the mystery of the Great Way. The world with the recovery of spiritual qi was full of the most primitive and simple mystery of the Great Way, which inspired Lin Sun when he was meditating. In addition, after a long time of deduction, 40% of the scriptures comprehended by the 5 doppelgangers had been completely integrated into the Great Way Furnace scripture created by him. Although his cultivation didn't improve, Lin Sun knew that under this kind of suppression, as his cultivation became more and more profound, he would definitely make rapid progress and step into the threshold of the 5th level of the Emperor Realm when he had the opportunity to break through. Who? Old Toad and Lu were helping to take care of Shiryu and others. After years of imprisonment, these old friends rescued by Lin Sun had more or less suffered some accumulated injuries. What Hu and others were doing was to help them resolve their internal injuries one by one, so that their future cultivation would not be affected. But no matter what, Hu and Shiryu were actually not calm in their hearts. The former was looking forward to the arrival of the final battle, while the latter was worried about whether Lin Sun would encounter danger in this battle. Only Lin Sun had a piece of peace. 1 day, 2 days, when the dawn of the 3rd day came, the time of the final battle had come. These 3 days were extremely torturous for the practitioners in the whole Forbidden City. Many people almost counted the time and waited like a year. More practitioners had already poured into the area where Heart-Cleansing Peak was located on the day the news came out and waited here bitterly. When a morning light shone, With the area where heart-cleansing peak was located as the core, the nearby streets had already been overcrowded with practitioners. The noise rose and fell one after another. They were all talking about the final battle that would begin today. Alas, I hope Lin Sun won't come. I hope he can live well and make a comeback when he has absolute strength in the future. It's impossible. With Lin Sun's character in the inferior world, he will definitely come to the final battle since he said such words. It's okay if he doesn't show up. If he does, how can he survive? Like before, most practitioners were full of pessimism about Lin Sun. After all, his opponents were a group of orthodoxies in the ancient desolation domain. Who in the world could be his enemy? Since Lin Sun dares to say such words, he should have some confidence. What I'm curious about now is where his confidence comes from. In the crowd, an aloof and cold woman spoke. Destroying the 3 aristocratic families has proved that his combat power is at least at the level of quasi-emperor. If he masters some special fighting means, he may really be able to fight with those orthodoxies in the ancient desolation domain. But he still has little chance of winning. A handsome man with green hair next to her said. This man was Wei Yunzhong, the leader of the group of people Lin Sun met on his way back to Xiao Empire from Soul Oblivion Sea. It's a pity if such a character dies. The aloof woman frowned. The major forces in Soul Oblivion Sea are not qualified to intervene in this matter. Don't forget that there is news that an old monster in heaven-reaching sword sect has stepped into the Emperor realm. There was a trace of desire in Wei Yunzhong's eyes. This time he came to the Forbidden City to look for some Tao affinity, to see if he could use it to break through to the Emperor realm. While talking, there was a loud bang in the sky. Countless people looked up. A bright golden rainbow broke through the sky. It was a big shot in the realm of Quasi-Emperor from the orthodoxy of the ancient desolation domain. And this was just the beginning. With the appearance of this golden rainbow, 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, in the end, there were hundreds of big shots with a horrible aura of Quasi-Emperor. They arrived over the ruins of heart-cleansing peak one after another. The power they exuded covered the sky and made the void tremble. At this moment, the sounds of discussion in this expanse of the heavens and the earth had stopped abruptly. It was perfectly silent, and the atmosphere had become deathly silent. Everyone was dumbfounded, their bodies and minds shaken. They didn't expect that there would be so many quasi-emperors just to deal with Lin Sun. Such a scene was enough to make people desperate and collapse. P.S. There will be more updates in the evening, about 9:30. Chapter 2457. Hundreds of quasi-emperors gathered in the sky. In the mortal world, every quasi-emperor was the peak existence in the world. Even with the recovery of spiritual chi, the order of the great way of heaven and earth was extremely firm, but the power of quasi-emperors could easily burn mountains and boil seas. How terrible would the power of hundreds of quasi-emperors appear at the same time? Boom! Heaven and earth exploded, and the clouds collapsed. For a time, thunder and wind were raging, and the pressure was like a thick black cloud covering the sky, making this area as dark as night. The hundreds of quasi-emperors stood in different areas, all with a stern face, revealing unique indifference and majesty. Everyone's eyes swept across them. Heaven-reaching sword sect, holy land of spiritual treasure, Xuandu Taoism sect, Beast spiritual mountain, Black Sea Dog clan, more than a dozen orthodoxies of the ancient wasteland domain sent out hundreds of quasi-emperors together. At that moment, the whole world was silent. All the people who saw this scene felt their hearts were clenched and they couldn't breathe. How could it be possible? How could there be so many quasi-emperors? Countless people screamed in their hearts. What kind of existence was a quasi-emperor? Before the recovery of spiritual chi, they were almost extinct in the world. Even in the current world, if there was a quasi-emperor in a force, it was enough to shake the world and look down on a region. High-level forces, such as the Hua family, the Qi family, and the Qi family had been in the mortal world for generations, but each of them only had 1 or 2 quasi-emperors before they were destroyed. But now, there were hundreds of quasi-emperors in the ancient wasteland domain. It was clear that they wanted to suppress and deter the world with absolute power. Many elders had seen that the reason why the orthodoxies of the ancient wasteland domain put out such a large lineup was to warn the world and kill the chicken to warn the monkey. And Lin Sun was the chicken that was about to be killed. If Lin Sun, the master of heart-cleansing peak, guessed this scene, would he still have the courage to declare war on the orthodoxies of the ancient wasteland domain? At this moment, all the practitioners in the mortal world felt cold all over, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. In the face of hundreds of quasi-emperors, even those who were arrogant and confident in Lin Sun had to admit that if Lin Sun dared to appear today, he was doomed to suffer. Surrounded by hundreds of quasi-emperors, Lin Sun might not even be able to escape. After all, no matter how strong Lin Sun was, could he fight against hundreds of quasi-emperors at the same time? At this moment, no one dared to hold out any hope for Lin Sun. Where is Lin Sun? Suddenly, a voice that was heavy like thunder rumbled and resounded in the heavens and the earth, and it shook the ears of everyone to the point of droning. It was like the voice of a god. In the sky, a purple-robed, white-haired man with a sword on his back from the numinous treasure Holy Land said, "Could it be that he's afraid?" The expressions of countless cultivators changed indeterminately. If they were in Lin Sun's position, they would surely flee at the first possible moment if they saw this scene. How would they dare to show themselves? This little bastard simply goes back on his word. I thought he had improved a lot over the years. Who would have thought that he wouldn't dare to show his face when he issued the challenge? Mocking, disdainful, and cold voices rang out from the mouths of the quasi-emperors, causing the entire place to rumble. A bunch of old bastards. Are they blind? I have been waiting for you for a long time. An indifferent voice resounded through the heavens and the earth, and it was clearly transmitted into everyone's ears. In an instant, countless gazes turned towards the source of the sound. In the ruins of heart-cleansing peak, a figure appeared silently in people's sight as if out of thin air. His figure was tall and indifferent, with black hair and black eyes, and his long robe fluttering. It was Lin Sun. Only then did people suddenly realize that Lin Sun had been waiting here for a long time, but no one noticed his existence before. However, his back was only sad and regretful in everyone's eyes. There were hundreds of quasi-emperors in the sky, and their horrible aura covered the whole world. Lin Sun's appearance was no different from seeking death. How could it be him? Wei Yunzhong's pupils shrank, and he was surprised. The aloof and arrogant woman beside him also widened her eyes in disbelief. When she met Lin Sun in the East Sea before, she expressed her disdain. Who would have thought that this passerby was the head of heart-cleansing peak who had been famous in the world many years ago? Father, can Uncle really win? The lovely Shi Linlang grasped Shi Yu's clothes tightly with her little hands and said nervously, "It should be possible." Shi Yu looked dignified, and he had no confidence in his heart. "It's not should, but definitely." Old Toad corrected him. He, Ahu Alu, Little Silver, and Little Tian had also arrived. They stood in the crowd and watched. But compared with the tension and pessimism of others, they seemed calm and relaxed. Under the sky, black clouds loomed over the city. When they saw Lin Sun, the group of quasi-emperors were also stunned, and their faces were slightly embarrassed. A living man was obviously under their eyes, but they didn't notice him, which seemed to be a silent mockery of their ignorance. "Demon God Lin, didn't you declare that you would fight with us here? Now we are all here. What else do you have to say?" An elder of Black Tengu clan looked down at Lin Sun, with blood-red eyes and a grim and cruel smile on his face. "Lin Sun, you shouldn't have come. Do you know what it means to miss the recovery of spiritual chi for 50 years? A strong man of Holy Land of Spirit Treasure laughed. His voice was like thunder, shaking the world. "Before declaring war, do you think we will still look down on you as before? Wrong. No matter who it is, no one can deny that you are a rare genius of this generation. You cannot be compared to ordinary people. Since you dare to declare war, you must have something to rely on. We of course will not be fooled by you." A beautiful woman with an enchanting figure from Xuandu Taoist sect said with a smile. So, you have seen it now. With hundreds of quasi-emperors traveling together, what else do you have to fight with us? Cut the crap. Surrender or die. Lin Sun choose. A quasi-emperor of Heavenly Sword sect said coldly. At this moment, the power of the group of quasi-emperors was like a landslide and a tsunami, sweeping through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, causing the world to roar and the clouds that covered the forbidden city to explode. If not for the recovery of spiritual chi, the order of heaven and earth would have become extremely firm. Most likely, a small half of the forbidden city would have been destroyed by such terrifying power. And in the field, many cultivators were so oppressed that their bodies went limp and suffocated, and some were even directly injured, vomiting blood and falling to the ground. Retreat quickly. Countless people's expressions changed as they retreated to the distance, afraid to be affected. How can we fight this battle? Many people felt cold and desperate for Lin Sun. And at this time, Lin Sun slowly raised his head, glanced at the quasi-emperors, and sighed softly. I have been waiting here for 3 days. Who would have thought that I would wait for you useless chickens and dogs? Didn't you say that one of you has become an emperor? Why don't you come to die? It's really disappointing. Lin Sun's voice was very low, but his words rang clearly in everyone's ears. Everyone was stunned. In the face of such a desperate situation, Lin Sun still dared to be so contemptuous? Is he completely crazy because he knows that he is no match for them? Countless people thought in their hearts. What did he say? Arrogant. Does he really think this is the past? Hundreds of quasi-emperors changed their expressions at the same time, and more people looked down at Lin Sun, as if looking at an ant that was about to be crushed to death. Don't be angry, everyone. Isn't this the demon Lin we are familiar with? He is audacious and unrepentant. This time, it doesn't hurt to let him say a few more words before he dies. The woman of Xuandu Taoist sect said with a charming smile. No, I can't tolerate him saying one more word. The elder of the Black Sea Tengu tribe roared. Attack, kill him. Boom. At this moment, hundreds of quasi-emperors attacked together. They were well aware of what Lin Sun had done in the ancient Desolation realm back then. Even if they looked down on Lin Sun, they would not hold back at all. They would use their strongest power to directly crush Lin Sun into pieces. Boom! How terrifying would it be when hundreds of quasi-emperors attacked together? The spiritual chi of heaven and earth within a radius of 1,000 miles was instantly sucked out. All kinds of power of the Great Way converged into a monstrous torrent, like a Milky Way smashing down from the sky. The incomparably dazzling light of the Great Way made the world dim. The void in the surrounding area collapsed. In the face of such a destructive blow, countless cultivators were shocked and lost their voices. Everyone's heart tightened as they watched this scene. Many people did not even dare to look and could not bear to see Lin Sun being killed. Brother Lin, sure you wanted to call out, but he could not. His heart seemed to be torn apart. But the next moment, Lin Sun waved his long sleeves. It was done in a casual manner, as if he was flicking away dust, and the torrent of energy that smashed over. The terrifying attack that was sufficient to blast the heavens and the earth into pieces had actually vanished into thin air and vanished without a trace. How is this possible? The crowd of quasi-emperors stared with wide eyes, not daring to believe the scene before them. Even some of the more ruthless characters who had been calm all along had a slight change of expression. They frowned, and their eyes revealed shock. Again, an elder of the Heavenly Sword sect roared. These quasi-emperors joined forces again, and endless power smashed down. This level of power was even more terrifying than before. But there was no difference in the result. When it reached Lin Sun, it silently collapsed and disappeared without a trace. Like a cool breeze, not even a strand of Lin Sun's hair was blown. This unbelievable scene made everyone present dumbfounded, and they almost thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them. Even those quasi-emperors stared with wide eyes. Their attacks had been easily dispersed twice in a row. This was no longer abnormal, but terrifying. At this moment, Lin Sun finally spoke, too weak. There was a faint trace of flagging interest in his expression. He had thought that there would be an earth-shattering battle, and that the figures of the various great orthodoxies who had stepped into the martial emperor realm would all arrive. In the end, it was just a group of ant-like quasi-emperors who might not even be able to withstand a full blow from him. Without seeing him move, his figure appeared out of thin air in the ruins under the firmament, and his gaze swept across the crowd. "Now, I will send you all on your way." His voice shook the 9 heavens. P.S. I will update the first chapter tomorrow after 12 o'clock in the morning, and the second chapter tomorrow will be written when the goldfish returns home. Chapter 2458. Attack. At this moment, the group of quasi-emperors attacked with all their might, not giving Lin Sun a chance to attack at all. Hundreds of treasures dragged a dazzling radiance, wrapped in the terrifying Taoist techniques of various deities, and attacked Lin Sun together. That scene was enough to make ghosts and deities tremble in fear. Lin Sun's expression was indifferent, neither sad nor happy, and there was no emotional fluctuation in his black eyes. "See," he casually pointed with a finger, casually and lightly. But that black nightmare Tengu Elder, who was said to be an old monster in the 3rd stage of the quasi-emperor realm, was directly blown up by his finger in the air. Countless scarlet blood splattered in the void, and broken limbs flew all over the sky. Then Lin Sun stretched out his finger and drew a line in the void, and a brilliant sword thousands of feet long swept across, directly cutting more than 10 quasi-emperors into 2 at the waist, as easily as harvesting a stalk of grass. The waterfall of blood mixed with shrill screams resounded through the sky. Countless people were horrified, their faces pale, and their scalps tingled. This was too strong. It completely subverted everyone's imagination. At this moment, Lin Sun seemed to think that his speed was too slow and directly leaped up. His big sleeves flew up, and he waved them fiercely. Clang, clang, clang. Countless dazzling Taishian sword chi surged like a storm, and the brilliant sword light shot up into the sky, covering the sky. Then, all of them descended with a loud bang. A peerless sword rain followed. Boom! More than 30 quasi-emperors were killed on the spot, and after their bodies exploded, they were directly crushed and evaporated by the endless torrent of sword chi, disappearing completely. Lin Sun's aura was indifferent and otherworldly, but now that he displayed his power, people finally realized what was called invincibility and what was called crushing. The lineup of the hundreds of quasi-emperors was so powerful that it could make all living beings in the lower world despair. But under Lin Sun's attack, they were easily harvested like weeds in the countryside in the blink of an eye. Whatever treasures, whatever Taoist techniques, they were all like paper. No matter how strong their cultivation was, or how tough their physique was, they were all vulnerable at this moment, until the sword rain that filled the sky disappeared. Under the sky, the bloody mist tumbled and surged, and only a few quasi-emperors were left. Because they were relatively far away, and because they dodged desperately at the first moment, they were lucky enough to survive. The other 90-odd quasi-emperors were all killed. At this moment, the entire world was silent. Only Lin Sun's tall figure was left, standing proudly in the void. His black hair and black clothes made him look indifferent, but his power was like a god coming to the world. The gazes of countless people wavered, and they were shocked to the point that they lost their composure and trembled. Peak Master Lin seemed to have killed more than 90 quasi-emperors in the blink of an eye. This should be an illusion, right? Why do I feel like I'm dreaming? Dream? I think so. Many people were stunned, their eyes lifeless. In reality, the impact of the bloody scene earlier was simply too great. In the blink of an eye, more than 90 quasi-emperors were annihilated. Who would believe it? How could there be such terrifying power in this world? At this moment, even those figures of the older generation that felt they were extremely shrewd and had experienced the vicissitudes of the world were shocked to the point their scalps were on the verge of exploding while tempestuous waves surged in their hearts. In fact, this was because they had underestimated Lin Sun from the very beginning. When Lin Sun made his move, the power that belonged to Zhu Shui's emperor had completely overturned their expectations. If those great emperors on the starry sky ancient path had seen this, they would not have lost their composure. After all, with the power of Dayuan Emperor, when he dealt with these quasi-emperors, he was simply like a god in heaven crushing ants on the ground. It was as easy as killing chickens and dogs. Too strong. Sure, you shouted excitedly. Hey, don't make a fuss. You haven't seen Big Brother's glory when he slaughtered Emperor Realm figures. That's what I call domineering. Old Toad, Alu, and the others couldn't help laughing. Peak Master Lin is invincible, magnificent, awesome. At this moment, some of the older generation cried out excitedly, as if they had returned to the time when they were young and the scene of the past emerged. At that time, Lin Sun was as domineering as he was today, radiant and unparalleled. Soon, there was a burst of cheers. Many native cultivators of the lower world couldn't help shouting and cheering for Lin Sun. In these past few years, the sects of the ancient Desolation region had invaded the lower dimensions, and they'd wantonly seized the fortuitous encounters of the Grand Tao. They'd given rise to countless storms of blood and swallowed countless powers, and they pressed down upon the cultivators of the lower dimensions to the point they were suffocating. And Lin Sun's performance at this moment gave them a glimmer of hope to break through the darkness and reverse the situation of the world. Even those who didn't think highly of Lin Sun before were convinced at this moment. Let's go. In this sensational atmosphere, the few remaining quasi-emperors had long been scared out of their wits and chose to flee at the first possible moment. There's no way to survive in front of me. Lin Sun's eyes were deep as he took a step forward. Boom! With Lin Sun as the center, the void suddenly exploded like glass, and the terrifying power of destruction spread out like a hurricane. The remaining quasi-emperors were like straws that were swept into the raging waves of the sea. Amidst horrified and helpless screams, their bodies exploded inch by inch, and their souls scattered. At this point, the hundreds of quasi-emperors who came to fight had all been killed, and it only took a moment for all of this to happen. The scene was completely boiling. Countless cultivators were so excited that their cheeks flushed and they shouted hysterically, as if they were venting the excitement in their hearts. Under the sky, that tall and straight figure was like a god from the legends, easily sweeping away all enemies. What was most incredible was that Lin Sun was so casual, as if he didn't use his real power at all, but he killed hundreds of quasi-emperors in one fell swoop. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it when it was spread out. How terrifying Lin Sun's cultivation was now. And just as everyone was cheering, a terrifying white saber light appeared out of thin air and chopped at Lin Sun with incomparably powerful force. It was incredibly fast. This, Alu, and the others were all shocked. Puff! Lin Sun's figure was cut in half by the saber light. No! At this moment, no one knew how many people exclaimed. Even Old Toad, and the others turned pale. No one expected that such a shocking change would happen just after Lin Sun killed all the enemies. It was too sudden. When they saw Lin Sun's figure being torn apart, some people almost collapsed. But the next moment, Lin Sun's figure appeared in the void, not far away. It was also at this time that people suddenly realized that it was just a phantom of Lin Sun that had just been smashed by the saber chi. The reason was that he dodged too fast. Sure enough, this boy has set foot in the Emperor Realm. In the distance, there was a cold and majestic voice, like the rubbing of blades, stinging the eardrums of everyone present, making them so uncomfortable that they were about to cough up blood. Immediately afterward, a figure emerged out of thin air. This man had gray hair, wore a black Taoist robe, and was surrounded by wisps of dazzling law of the Great Way, as if he had come out of a sacred place. When he appeared, the incomparably terrifying pressure of the Emperor Realm swept across the world like stormy waves. Countless cultivators at this moment were scared out of their wits, and their state of mind was about to collapse. It was a kind of supreme and immeasurable coercion that acted on their minds and couldn't be dispelled. It's terrible. This is the great emperor. In this world, finally, someone has taken this step. Everyone was shocked. Even Old Toad, and the others couldn't help but be surprised that there was really an emperor realm in the mortal world. Did this mean that the recovery of spiritual chi had continued until now, and some opportunities that belonged to the emperor realm had also appeared? However, to everyone's complete disappointment, there was more than one emperor realm. Brother Mingya, it's not that easy to deal with an emperor realm expert. However, with me, Xiao Yunzi, and fellow Taoist Yu, it won't be difficult to capture this boy. Accompanied by a leisurely voice, an elegant and romantic man with fluttering sleeves appeared out of thin air. The supreme elder of the heavenly sword sect, Xie Shangshu. The one called Mingya by Xie Shangshu was the old man in a Taoist robe. He was the supreme elder of the holy land of spirit treasure. Swish! Swish! At the same time as Xie Shangshu appeared, two figures appeared in two other directions. One of them had long hair, wore a black robe, and looked cold. He was the old monster of the Xuandu Taoism sect, Xiao Yunzi. The other one was a woman in a colorful dress. She was dignified and virtuous, and her body glowed with Taoist light. She was the supreme elder of the beast's spiritual mountain, Yu Yan. The four of them emitted the power of the emperor realm, filling the void and making countless cultivators' vision go black. Their heads buzzed, and they were about to explode. Retreat! Retreat again! There was chaos in the field. Countless people were in a panic and didn't dare to approach them. For Emperor Realm experts appeared here together. No one had thought of this before. In fact, this was the first time in many people's lives that they had seen an Emperor Realm expert. Just looking at them made them feel frightened and afraid, and they couldn't even think of resisting. That kind of power was too supreme and terrifying. At this moment, the excitement of the crowd had completely vanished, and it was replaced by endless coldness. Could Lin Sun still have a chance to fight against four Emperor Realm experts? Lin Sun, the grudge between you and the orthodoxy of the ancient Desolation Realm has long been irreconcilable. But I can give you a chance. Bow your head and surrender to us now, and we will let bygones be bygones. Xie Shangshu of the heaven-reaching sword sect said leisurely. His tone was arrogant and condescending. Lin Sun's surrender was like a gift. Mingya of the holy land of spirit treasure, Xiao Yunzi of the Xuandu Taoism sect, and Yu Yan of the beast's spiritual mountain all fixed their eyes on Lin Sun. Their expressions were indifferent, as if victory was within their grasp. The whole Forbidden City was shrouded in a chilling atmosphere that made people's hearts palpitate. Lin Sun put his hands behind his back and sneered. Who do you think you are? You have just stepped into the Emperor Realm. How dare you ask me to surrender? Do you really think you can be lawless as an emperor? On the starry sky ancient path, even the 6 major Dao courts and the 10 major battle clans would not have dared to say such shameless words to him. Lin Sun found it ridiculous that these old guys who had just become Emperor Realm dared to put on such a posture. In the final analysis, it was a matter of vision. Limited by their cognition, they were destined to be ignorant like frogs in a well.